Thank you all very much for being here this evening for this large gathering of the Board of Trustees meeting of the Village of Southampton. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. We're going to start this evening by having a board recognition for the outstanding service by our first responders. I'd like to call up our chief of the fire department, Manny Escobar, and we had several members of our first responders who are also going to come forward at this time for the heroic rescue that they did at the fire department's chicken and ribs dinner back in August. Manny, could you come up to the podium, please, and use the microphone with those of the and Kyle and Colby, all you guys, please come up and stand behind Manny if you could.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us here tonight. So on August 19th, about a month ago, we had a chicken and ribs barbecue event from the Southampton Fire Department. It's an annual event that we started about 5 years ago. It's a beautiful evening that we have gathering together, great food. For those that were there, I'm sure they could attest that we had amazing food that evening, gathered together for beautiful music, some drinks, and just gathered together with the community. And it's a benefit that we collect funds for our benevolent committee and our truck and tea committee as well. But that evening, things turned differently for some of us. I personally was not there. I was in Tennessee for my son's baseball tournament. But the members that were there, they were able to give me all the what transpired that evening. Approximately around 6:30 p.m., we had a male that collapsed in front of the stage. At that time, we had a member that witnessed it quickly, went to the patient, turned around, and there's about 14 members of different agencies from the fire department, police officers, and the ambulance that came to assist and work on the patient. Thankfully, the patient is out there living, walking, back to work. And I tell you, it wasn't because of the food or the drinks, it was something else. You know, I was getting phone calls back and forth about that evening, what was happening, and when I came back, I heard more stories. And I have to say that as the chief of the fire department, I am just such an emotion and gratitude for these members in this community and what they did that evening. Again, it's something that we train for, we prepare for these kind of things, but not that kind of night. And like I said, it was about 14 members, a few members that could make it tonight here. And I'm just, again, grateful, and I'm sure the community should be very proud of these men and women that you have in this community, in the village. I won't speak too much, but I'll pass this over to Kyle McGinnis, the chief of the Southampton Village Ambulance, and he could speak a little bit more about it and what transpired that evening.
Thank you. Have fun. I like how you took it off, instead of shortening it. Good evening. My name is Kyle McGinnis. I'm the chief of the Village Ambulance. I'm going to get into a little bit what happened on the 19th. Like Manny said, we had the chicken and ribs dinner. While we were all attending and technically off duty, which means I didn't have my chief's truck, my assistant chief didn't have his chief's truck with all of our medical equipment in it, a male attendee suddenly collapsed in front of the stage. Paramedics Christy Lockhart, Robert Vecchio, and EMT Kenny Lockhart witnessed the collapse and immediately was at the patient's side beginning to assess him. They determined that he was in cardiac arrest, which means he had no pulse and wasn't breathing. They started CPR. Just after the patient collapsed, I was alerted by Chief Polis Walker of the fire department that a medical emergency was taking place in front of the stage. After retrieving the AED from the truck floor and running towards the patient, it became evident that this was no normal medical emergency, but rather a cardiac arrest. CPR and ventilations were performed by the members of the SVVA. Some of them are present here today, while members of the SFD played a key role in getting additional equipment that we needed in order to properly treat the patient. Just prior to the ambulance's arrival, the patient regained a pulse, began to breathe on his own, and was transported to an awaiting medevac helicopter to go to Stony Brook University. A few days later, the patient was released from the hospital and has completely recovered. I cannot put into words how proud I am of both the SVVA and the SFD, both my paid and volunteer members, not only because of their actions on the night of that event, but how dedicated they are to serving their community. Everyone in attendance that night saw a small glimpse of what we do day in and day out. Whether it is a critically injured patient or a routine medical call, the dedicated members of the SVVA treat every patient with the utmost respect and provide the highest level of patient care possible. The events that took place on the night of August 19th highlight the importance of knowing CPR. Out of hospital cardiac arrest, which is what this event was, has a less than 7% chance of survival. Early recognition and initiating CPR increases that tremendously. To the board, I appreciate you guys honoring us and your continued dedication to helping us out. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Kyle. Great job.
Thank you very much, Manny.
Thanks, Manny.
Thank you again. At this time, I'm also going to recognize from the New York Conference of Mayors the Longevity of Service Awards for those employees in the village that have served for 25 years or longer. First up is our new Chief of Police, Suzanne Hurto. 25 years of service. Congratulations. The next to be recognized is our Lieutenant Chris Wetter. I'm not sure if he's here, but he has 30 years of service. Maybe you will accept on his behalf. And wait. And our Detective Sergeant Herman Lamison, who has 35 years of service. Mark Maddock, who is the head of our central garage here in the village of Southampton for 25 years of service. Congratulations, Mark. And although she cannot be with us tonight,
Congrats, Mark. Thank you.
Danielle Burns also has served 25 years as the receiver of taxes. So now we will get on to board presentations. We will have a brief update from the Lake Agawam Conservancy, and Nelson Pope and Voorhees will give us a brief update on the traffic study, which was not fully complete when we last met at the work session, and Chris Gobler will also speak from Stony Brook. But again, these are going to be very brief because we have a lot of people in the room that would like to speak. But Chris, do you want to go first?
I'm going to speak on behalf of the Conservancy, Bob Gifford, and his court traffic.
Fine.
Quickly go through some of the slides, and then we'll have the traffic study.
Okay, well, Chris, please come forward then.
So, good evening, board members, mayor, trustees. Good evening, everyone else. I'll get more into the mic. My name is Chris Gobler. I'm a professor at Stony Brook University. I'm also the director of the New York State Center for Clean Water Technology. I've been studying Lake Agawam since the year 2000. I've got a 23-year data set on that water body. I'm going to go through these slides, but I'm really going to speak to this mainly from two perspectives. That's public health and the environment. Because I guess my main point would be that this is a project, obviously it's multidimensional, and there's other people who can speak to the benefits of this project with regards to recreational use and enjoyment and the village and other sorts of things. But what I can tell you is that this project is being designed in such a way to protect public health and to improve the quality of water and the ecosystem within Lake Agawam. And that's been something that's been a lifelong effort for me. I've been working on this in Lake Agawam, in this village, for, like I said, since the year 2000. And I think there's an opportunity here that's unlike one I've seen in the past, to both address, to essentially address a very major source of pollutants within the lake. So let's just, maybe I'll go through the slides here, so maybe see what the next slide looks like. I mean, overall, these are the things that are out there and will be discussed today. I'm really not going to go through the details of this. I could speak to them. I don't want to get it all wrong and misspeak on any of these points. But I mean, I think we know just basically this is an opportunity to triple the size of the park in Southampton. And you know, when it comes to the closure of the pond, I mean, we're going to hear about the traffic study. I'm going to speak to the environmental aspect and the public health aspect of it. I know that the plan for the Conservancy is to fully pay for the entire park and to pay for the maintenance of the park via an endowment. So this is something that would be of no cost tax-wise and to the village as well. And again, we'll hear about the traffic. I do want to just take a moment to speak to the public health part of this. For those of you who are not aware, there is a problem in Lake Agawam, specifically with regard to something known as blue-green algae. They're also known as toxic cyanobacteria. The toxic part because they make both gastrointestinal toxins and neurotoxins, right? And I wish that the news here was I could sugarcoat it, but I'm just going to tell it like it is, frankly. These toxins are a human health threat. We've seen through the years levels that are very, very dangerous. There's new and emerging evidence that even these toxins can be aerosolized. So that is, even if you're not in the water, if you're near the water, it could be a threat, right? So the Conservancy was really founded on the principle of addressing that issue and really what would be within the village a public health crisis and getting these events under control. I think there's a list of things that are getting done, so I'm going to have the slides continue here. But again, I talked about the public health threat. You don't need me to tell you that. You can look at the picture and get a sense of what that's all about. And again, the Lake Agawam Conservancy was founded upon the principle of addressing this issue. This has been an issue for many, many years. It's taken a long time to get in, and the Conservancy has been incredibly aggressive in putting money behind projects to address this public health issue. Let's see what the next slide looks like here. Right, so the idea here, as you know, is to preserve, to open up a park that would be 3 times or triple the size of the existing park, as we know, in the area that's really just, I guess, due south of where we're standing right now. This would be obviously a park for everybody. In addition to that, the idea is to have some botanical gardens in there as well, designed by Peter Marino. And again, with the idea that this is all covered by funding through the Conservancy, both direct purchases and the creation of an endowment. And I know there's already millions of dollars committed towards that to date. Point 3 is one that's incredibly important. That's the environmental aspect. The picture of Lake Agawam is not currently up there, but what I can tell you is that if you look around Lake Agawam, really the area with the most direct runoff from land into the lake is along that northwest corner along Pond Lane. And if you've been out here in Southampton this summer, you now know that we're living in an era where our rainfall patterns have changed, right? It doesn't rain like it used to. The data's there to show that. From NOAA, we've got a 78% increase in the amount of what is known as heavy rainfall that leads to direct runoff into the lake of a proportion we did not see in the 20th century. We're now having lots of rain all at once. The ground gets saturated very quickly, and when that happens, you've got direct runoff and nutrient pollution going from land into the lake. That's enriched in nitrogen and phosphorus. That's what's driving these toxic cyanobacterial blooms and creating these toxins that are an immense public health threat. So the idea along that entire Pond Lane area is to set up essentially a buffer, a vegetative buffer that would be all along that area. And after I finish saying this, I'm going to be able to turn it over to Bob Gifford. But along that area, and it's going to be doubly important, the first thing that this buffer is going to do is intercept any runoff from land into the lake. And that represents, if you didn't see it already, probably about somewhere on the order of 20% of the surface of Lake Agawam. But more important, this is the only area that doesn't have a buffer, right? There's been a buffer put along the entire southern region, along Gin Lane. There are buffers along the homes. This is an area that literally you get drainage from the north and from the south coming in directly into the lake with nutrients that are fueling these blooms. That's the first purpose of putting in the buffer. The second purpose is to essentially use lake water to run through this vegetative buffer. So by running water from the lake through this vegetated area, it's an opportunity to continue to clean the lake and get the lake even cleaner, continue to move out nutrients, and to mitigate this ongoing public health threat. So with that being said, Bob, do you want to come in and jump in and take the wheel?
So to speak.
Catch your breath?
Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. And my name is Bob Gifford, and it's my privilege to be the president of the Lake Agawam Conservancy. What I thought I would talk about is some of the recent things. And again, this is going to be a complicated process. What we have up now are plans that Tim Rumpf and his firm prepared for what we would put along the lakefront. And really it goes all the way from Dozier Park, across Agawam Park, and then all the way down the side. Now this proposal is obviously, it's preliminary. There's a lot of work to be done. Any infrastructure project takes a lot of time. And we want to get as much community input as we possibly can to get this right. We want this to be something that 50 years from now, people in Southampton say, this was really great, and the people who did this were really smart. And all of us, all the trustees, the mayor, and everyone in the community, we made good decisions. So the plan would be to create what would effectively be 13 acres of additional public park space in the center of the village. There would be a quarter of a mile of direct and safe public access along the lake for everything from walking to running to biking, etc. And Peter Marino Gardens would be behind the work along the lake. And then as Chris talked about, we would install this critical 25-foot vegetative buffer, and there would be a lane that would be put in for emergency vehicles, which would be on sort of permeable surface. And this plan is obviously subject to work. For example, there's a kayak launching and a fishing location right here and here. There are roundabouts. There is ADA parking. And part of the plan would be to add over 40 spaces over in Dozier Park. In addition, I urge folks to take a look at the area around sort of the promenade by the monument. We would connect that up to Dozier Park so that you could park your car here and then walk all the way over to this whole area where you'd have all this incredible public access, jogging paths, pedestrian paths, place to have picnic, all would be built, right here. So just to sort of go through the plan to see where we are. Okay, so that's the expansion of the gardens and the park, excuse me. I think we went backwards. Okay, now what I wanted to talk about next was the sort of the multi-part nature of this proposal. There's a lot of steps to get this done, and it will take time, and no one's thinking it's going to happen overnight. And the first step, and really the only step that the trustees really have to think about now and that the town board needs to think about, is the acquisition of 137 Pond Lane from the Paulson Family Foundation. And that's something we really think should be done this year. And I think we've talked previously about the facts surrounding that, but the Paulson Family Foundation bought the 2 lots that were about to be built and developed by spec builders. The second part of this process, which I think would be probably 2023 and into 2024, and Tim Rumpf's firm has started to do that work, would be to develop a plan for water quality improvements along the 1/4 mile of Lake Agawam, which is right in front of this building going all the way to the turn. Develop that buffer, the bike paths, the pedestrian paths, adding the more than 40 parking spaces, adding the ADA spaces close to right where we are right now, extending the boardwalk, and having this 1 lane of permeable roadway for access to emergency vehicles, as well as for, the Southampton Fire Department has their annual event there. That could obviously continue. Then there would be a stewardship agreement that would be entered into between Southampton Village, Southampton Town, and the Conservancy, where the Conservancy would run the parkland and the gardens and the area along the lake. We would raise the money to support it. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then, and I think this is a really important part of the whole plan, the fourth piece would be the installation of the AECOM algae harvester in Dozier Park. I believe there's a contract right now that the mayor and the trustees are looking at. The funds have been raised for that, $5 million in federal funding, $5 million in CPF funding, and that algae harvester is going to be a game changer. I spoke to the man from AECOM who's done this, Mr. Levy, and he actually thinks that the ability to clean 3 million gallons of Lake Agawam water every day, will be a real game changer. In a year or two from now, you'll see a much different lake, and a lake you could certainly be able to boat on safely. A lake where now, if you stick your arm in the lake, you're worried about, whether something bad is going to happen. And so we need to keep in mind that the motivation for this entire plan is the fact that if you have a clean Lake Agawam, which is available to the entire community, not just the people who live around it. The community is invested in a clean Lake Agawam, and it's sort of an embarrassment that one of the wealthiest communities in the United States has one of the sickest lakes. Second, I believe, until recently, in New York State. And so this installation of this algae harvester is a huge game changer, which is going to take a lake that people don't use and make it one they will want to use. Next, we are going to go to the Southampton Town CPF fund, which I'll talk about how much money they have. They have $250 million, which is the money that gets taken at, I think it's 3% on all purchases of real estate in the town. And there are a lot of big transactions in Southampton Village. We'll go to them, and they have now a water quality fund, and that water quality fund can be used for the improvements that we're talking about along Lake Agawam, and those improvements would include the pedestrian paths, the bike paths, the buffer. Right now, I urge folks to walk down Lake Agawam, walk down Pond Lane. You'll see literally there are cinder blocks on the side of the lake holding it up. It's an embarrassment, and it's eroding, and it's really an environmental mess. Next up, here we go. We obviously have to develop the plans for Southampton Gardens, and that's going to be a process that will involve community input. And I can tell you, over the weekend, we spoke to very, very, knowledgeable local landscape folks about this, and we'll talk a little bit about the gardens and how they'll be designed. And Peter Marino is very committed to having clean gardens in terms of how they're being done and not adding to the nitrogen load of the lake, and we'll talk about that. And there'll be input. Some people say they don't like the roses. Well, we'll take the roses out. People are flexible in how this can be done. Then, that process probably is, into this year, into next year. Then the Paulson Family Foundation will donate 154 Pond Lane. That's worth, I believe, $10.75 million to the gardens. And then we will do the work on fundraising for installation and maintenance of the gardens, and we have commitments approaching $10 million in addition to the 10 million plus that the Paulson Family Foundation is going to put in terms of just donating the land. And then, you know, our best estimate would be, you know, probably sometime in 2024, 2025, you would actually start to, you know, do real construction work. You'd have to get regulatory approvals for the work along the water, and then maybe look to having an opening of this, you know, sometime in 2025, 2026. So now let's just sort of, you know, to reset everyone, you know, here's the basic lay of the land. There are 3 lots. These were the Wyman property along Pond Lane. 111 Pond Lane is already owned by the town CPF, and it's not used. They paid $10 million for it. No community use. No one can walk through it. It's just sort of there. 137 Pond Lane and 153 Pond Lane were the purchases that Mr. Paulson made in 2021, and he did that because, you know, he was concerned and we were all concerned, and at the time he did it, we talked to then Mayor Warren, we talked to Jay Schneider, and we talked to other officials, and the idea was it was not possible to get the CPF process going, and then there was a question about whether the CPF process would buy one or both lots, and maybe they would do one, but certainly not two. So Paulson stepped up and paid $25 million to essentially prevent those lots from going to spec developer. And again, he's prepared to donate, you know, the 3.6 acres. Now, this is a really important slide and one that I think folks should focus on. If you look at the numbers from 1999 to 2022, there's been nearly $1 billion in CPF revenue collected. In fact, they've gotten to the point now where they're having a hard time figuring out where to spend it, because a lot of the farmland they've actually now purchased for the CPF. Currently, the CPF, and I checked this with Jay, has $250 million. That's a lot of money. And if you actually look at the acquisitions that have been made in the village, they have been few and far between, because for obvious reasons, there's not a lot of open space in Southampton Village. And you know, one of the biggest acquisitions is the one right next door on Pond Lane, and the ability to connect all these parcels together right in the center of the village is a potential game changer for all of us. And if you look in the master plan, 137 and 154 Pond Lane were identified as CPF priorities, and there's really nothing else. When you look, it's right there in the middle of downtown. And so if that land gets developed, it is lost to the community forever, forever. And this land is just beautiful, and I really urge folks to go up there and look at it. Look at the views. And there's the 2 lots. Again, the one to the north is already acquired by the CPF. And you know, we showed this at the last meeting, but this is literally the house that was on the website at Sotheby's that they were proposing to have get built at one of the 2 lots that the Paulson family purchased. I mean, this is what the alternative is, and obviously that doesn't make any sense. Now here's the Southampton Gardens, and I think, you know, one of the points I think that's important is, you know, this was in the Southampton Press editorial. You know, this is a world-class town. We deserve a world-class gardens. We deserve world-class things. If you look at a lot of the world-class things that are other than the beach, they're private. This would be a public gardens available to everyone. And now, again, changes could be made to the plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, this algae harvester is a critical part of the plan. The algae harvester needs to be on the Dosher Park. That's parkland. Under New York State law, you can't just put an algae harvester and not use parkland for some other use other than a park. And so in order to use Dosher Park for parking and for the skimmer, you need to do a swap of land, and that's where the 137 Pond Lane property comes in. And so if that property is not purchased by the Southampton Town CPF, you know, where do you put the skimmer that the village already has $10 million raised to run? And again, that skimmer or harvester is going to clean 3 million gallons of water a year. And one of the big issues people, you know, can't forget, and Chris is the expert, people complain about, well, you open up the drain and you can't use the beach for 2 days. Well, this lake is very, very unhealthy, and it will have ultimately long-term negative effects for the village of Southampton if we don't clean it up. And this algae harvester is a game changer. Now, let's talk a little bit about Pond Lane. This is obviously a source of contention for folks, and we want to just talk about it, and the experts will talk about it. Yes, it's on the National Historic, Register. It was built in the 1880s. It was built at a time when there were horses and buggies. It's largely landfill, and that's why you have the concrete right up against the edge of it. It doesn't meet modern safety standards, limited sight lines, 90-degree turn, and there is literally no vegetative buffer along Pond Lane. If you go over to Gin Lane, you at least have the Phragmites and a buffer that's been put in, not along this quarter mile of Pond Lane, and that's in part of how we actually got interested in doing this project, because what the Conservancy is committed to doing is putting buffers all around the lake. Private homes, I have one on my property, my neighbor does, everyone, we're putting them in, and we're also using proper, healthcare, not healthcare, proper environmental treatment, but there's no buffer there. There's no bike path, there's no public access. And if you actually look at it, it's kind of the view of the lake is actually blocked. And there's no public access. You have the problem of pedestrians and bicyclists competing with motor vehicles. There is that blind turn, and there was a very fatal accident back in 1995 with a 16-year-old boy, and that's why you see the flowers at the turn. You have the problem of competing with the geese, and there's literally no protection. I mean, that is not an acceptable buffer for protecting from runoff, and all that toxic material goes right into the lake. So if we have the algae harvester going at 3 million gallons a day, but we don't take care of the runoff problem, that's a serious issue. And again, there's no stormwater management. If you go over to Gin Lane, there is stormwater management. So as part of this whole plan, that would have to obviously be put in. And this is something, when you think about it, you see that's the drain pipe that puts all the toxic material directly into Lake Agawam. It's right there by the monument, and it's disgusting. There's no filter, nothing. It just goes straight in. So we can do whatever we want, putting in a sewer system, which is a great thing. But unless we deal with that drain pipe, and as part of this project, that's something we would do. We would put a filter in to address that problem. And then, we would obviously put a bioswale. There's all this invasive vegetation, and the views are not so great. Even if you enjoy driving your car, you only probably get 5 seconds of a view of the lake, and all that would be cleaned up. Now, the Arrayas design is really important to take a look at, and we don't really have that, and it's in the books for people, and again, we'll hand them out. But they put a lot of time into this, and there's a lot more time that will be done. There'll be an installation of a 25-foot vegetative buffer. Now, the thing to keep in mind is the right-of-way is not that wide, and the road is literally almost right up against the lake. So you need to move whatever is there at least 25 feet in order to have a proper buffer. I have a buffer in my house that's 30 feet, and I'm not in front of a road. And then if you look, we would want to have a dedicated pedestrian path. We'd want to have a dedicated bicycle path, and we'd want to have that dedicated one-lane permeable road for an emergency vehicle. We'd also want to have 1 mile, which is incredible, of direct public access. We'd want to extend the boardwalk, and we want to add the additional parking spaces. And we would have, and it's obviously subject to design, but at least 2, platforms like that, so that if the lake gets clean, people could, take their boats and go off into the lake. Now, this is a very important slide, one of the most important ones that we will have on the entire, hold it, right there. Okay, that's the existing, the red is the existing road, and then the, I guess it's the yellow is what you would need in terms of having a buffer. And you'll see there's just not enough room to have a 2-lane road in that particular space. There's also the problem of the topography, and I urge folks to just take a look at it. It goes up pretty steeply, so the only way you could have a bike path, which I think I'm told takes 12 feet, a pedestrian path which takes 6 feet, a buffer which takes 25 feet, and then a road, 2 lanes, which takes 25 feet. You can't do it. You'd have to put in a giant retaining wall along this entire property. It would look like we were in the worst part of the suburbs. Now, we have talked a little bit with the mayor, and I'll throw this out. I'll be the one who does it. You know, there may be a way if you have a one-lane road, you could have the one-lane road open, you know, at various points in time in order to have, use, for example, like if people want to go from, say, the estate section into town at a time when the traffic is bad, you could potentially have a one-lane road. There is just not enough room to have a 25-foot vegetative buffer, a bike path, entrance to this gardens in this location. It's just not here. And we've asked the experts that, and that's what they've told us. Maybe what I should do now is have Tony come on up and talk about it, and maybe Chris, about the importance of the buffer and why this has to be done sort of in this particular way, and why it's good for the lake and for the community. Do you want to come up?
Hi, I'm Tony Piazza from Piazza Horticultural. Just as a little bit of background, I've done several public-private partnership projects in the village of East Hampton that deal with water quality issues and native plantings and bioswales that were pretty impactful on the village and have been very successful. So, the thing that I'm here to sort of talk about is the necessity for that 25-foot buffer. If I had it my way, it would be a 50-foot buffer to really do what it needs to do for the lake. But the other thing is that removing the impermeable surface of Pond Lane the way it is now and replacing it with pervious surfaces, which are drivable, walkable, and bikeable on, will create basically a sump for any water coming down what is Pond Lane now and off of the slopes to slow it down, clean it up before it percolates back into the ground or hits the lake. And we're holding our residents around the lake to 25-foot buffers, and as a village, we can't even provide that along a quarter mile of lakefront access. So I come from a plant and wildlife background, and I'm working with the Conservancy to make sure that we're using plants endemic to this part of Long Island that can survive periods of extreme wet during the rainstorms and extreme drought during the summer, and survive that and do their job when they're called on during the runoff situations.
Okay, sort of going to the next. And again, we've talked about this. The Village Comprehensive Plan, which was approved by the trustees, there's a real concern about pedestrian safety and expansion of the bike network, and that's what this proposal is intended to do. Similarly, in the Village Master Plan, there was discussion about closing Pond Lane to motor vehicles and creating the bike path and acquiring the properties that we've talked about. And, the Baykeeper, among others, are supportive of this plan. They recognize that this will be good for the lake, good for the community. They're concerned about the impact of stormwater pollution on the lake, and also the impact of a road that's built in the 1880s right next to a lake that in the 1880s was a clean lake. And next up, I think what we would do is I'm going to introduce, because I am not a traffic expert, Kathy Eisman and Osmond Barry of Nelson Pope, and they're going to talk about the traffic study. We have copies of the traffic study and the pedestrian safety study, and if people don't have them, that's part of the reason I was late, because I got to make all these copies. But I think we have boxes of them, and we'll hand them out to folks so you can all look at them, and we'll put them on the village website. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. Yes.
Want me to turn it for you? I'll turn it for you.
So actually, Kathy Eisman from Nelson Pope and Voorhees. Osmond Barry is an engineer. Nelson and Pope has done a number of traffic studies, so he's got a lot of experience and a lot of personal observations that he's made about some of the impacts on traffic in the village. They did a study of the cut-throughs that occur related to Hill Street last year, as I'm sure you're all aware. So Osmond has that direct experience, so that's why I wanted to have him with us. We first did a traffic assessment. Nelson Pope did a traffic assessment back in 2022 when this first came up. And the idea was to identify what happens if you close Pond Lane to traffic, to vehicular traffic, and can the surrounding roadways handle it from a capacity perspective. So that was done 2022. It was updated earlier in 2023 using data from Memorial Day week. And then,
Yeah, it's important, we did it both before Memorial Day, so you get a regular period, and then actually during Memorial Day weekend, 2 separate years.
correct. And so you get the more typical, and then you get the very heavy summer season traffic. So the other thing that we did, which is what this slide talks about, is to look at pedestrian traffic, pedestrian use of Pond Lane, and we used cameras to do that. So the traffic study was actually updated using to look at how many cars went up and down Pond Lane during that same period, so we could say, hey, that's additional data that we can add to the study. All right, so I think I'm going to hand it over to Osman Barry. He can go through the technical aspects
Yeah,
of
the
this.
big point to make is, and just to get it out there, is like on a Sunday, on this particular Sunday, and this was not the walkathon Sunday, which was the prior week, you know, you had almost 849 people going into Pond Lane and then 874 people on a Sunday walking out of Pond Lane. Saturday, 637 going in and out. And then Friday, the number was 488 to 391. So there's a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic. We also did an analysis of the bicyclist counts on Pond Lane, and you know, roughly this is very recently on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it was more than 125 bicyclists going down Pond Lane. And I suspect if you had a pedestrian path and you had a bike path, there would be even more. And you know, what? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Osman Barry, traffic engineer from Nelson and Pope. As Bob already mentioned about the counts we did in August, we have done so many studies in the village on traffic, parking, and cut-through traffic. I will take off right from this slide here. As you can see from the data we presented from the counts we did, Pond Lane during that weekend had significant number of pedestrians and significant bike traffic. And that tells you, if you go to the next slide, Pond Lane itself, go to the next slide. Okay, Pond Lane, the existing curb radius on that roadway does not meet the actual standards. And Pond Lane has a sharp curve at the end that also does not meet side distance and side distance standards. And because of the amount of pedestrians you have and the number of bikes, you can tell we really need something safer for pedestrians in this road. Pedestrians interacting with cars on this road is not as safe. So if we go back to the study we did on the traffic portion of the study, we had done studies in 2022, 2023, before Memorial Day weekend and during Memorial Day weekend to quantify the amount of traffic on Pond Lane and try to do an analysis. If we close Pond Lane, how will that affect other surrounding roadways? Based on our analysis, if we assume that we're going to move all the traffic from Pond Lane by closing it to First Neck Lane, the capacity of First Neck Lane is adequate to handle that traffic. That is if we assume that everything goes to Pond Lane. But there are so many other options in the village that you can use to go north and south, to go north in the village or south to avoid Pond Lane. And the study also we did for the town, for the cut-through traffic, we did a study in August of 2022 to determine cut-through due to the heavy traffic westbound on Hill Street during the summer. In our study, we did find that many vehicles are using Pond Lane, First Neck Lane, to go down south to avoid the traffic on Hill Street and go west on Oxpasture Road and go back north on Campus Neck Lane and Lee's Lane and make a left turn to go out of the village. So you can tell most of the traffic on Pond Lane is actually cut-through traffic. It's not traffic that's destined to Pond Lane. Closing Pond Lane should actually reduce the cut-through in even the other roadways that you have there, because now that will keep traffic on Hill Street not going down south, trying to cut through the village and go back north. So that would be a benefit to the village by even closing Pond Lane. And from the pet study we did, you can tell there are a lot of pedestrians there. With this new garden, if they build this new garden, it's going to attract more pets coming to that area. So having pedestrians walking in that area on a roadway that has no sidewalk except to one side, and the roadway is narrow, with all the blind spots you have, it is not safe to have pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars going together. So we believe that closing Pond Lane, the traffic that's going to be moved around will not significantly impact other roadways in the village because it's mostly cut-through traffic, and that traffic can be distributed on other roadways that are optional for you to get in and out of the village.
And here's some, oh, wait, the wrong way. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, we can go.
Okay, so you want to talk about the parking study?
Yeah, parking. Okay, you want to do it with parking?
For parking also, we did do parking studies. We have a history of a lot of parking studies we did in the village of Southampton. Most recently, that we did a study for the Paris Concerts project. In our study, we did do parking counts in 2 of the municipal parking lots in the village and on-street parking in July on a weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and there are almost 700 parking spaces in those 2 parking lots. And on a Saturday and Sunday in June, over 200 spaces were available in those parking lots that we counted. And by building this park, we may lose a few spaces on Pond Lane, but there's enough parking in those parking lots to account for any loss of parking that you may have on Pond Lane. Go to the next slide.
I think that's next.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're at the end almost. I wanted to answer some questions about the gardens and maybe, dispel some of the thoughts. The plan is to have a relationship with the village and the town like the Central Park Conservancy. Obviously, our conservancy could be replaced if, the elected officials were not happy with us. We would privately raise the $10 million that we believe that it will take to install the gardens. Then we'll raise another $10 million to create an endowment, so this doesn't become anything that's going to become a cost of the village on a going forward basis to maintain the gardens. As I mentioned before, the Paulson Family Foundation is ready to put up 11.25 piece of land and donate it to the gardens. Now we've done some informal fundraising. We haven't started formal fundraising, and we've already secured donor commitments that are approaching $10 million. Now, some have said, well, identify all the people. People are pretty private and don't want to be identified until they know this project is actually going to work. But the amount of enthusiasm that we've seen for people who want to support this project has been extraordinary. And, this is, again, is something that will be a public, something that will be a legacy that in 50 years people will look back. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the gardens themselves. We've talked to Mr. Marino, and he wants to use native plants, shrubs, and trees to the fullest extent possible. The plan is to use water from Lake Agawam to irrigate the gardens to the fullest extent possible. And we're prepared to seek input from other landscaping experts because, again, we want the gardens to be environmentally friendly. And like everything else in this proposal, it's subject to revision and input by the public, the elected officials. I mean, we only put this out probably, in August. So this is something that I think, is obviously subject to change. Some people like some things, some people don't like some things. They can be changed. I think if you just go with an ordinary, boring, type of a garden or just a public space, it will not be what this could be, and something that the village of Southampton really, should have. And, I think we all believe if you just look at this whole proposal and you look at the master plan, it ticks off every single one of the, elements of the master plan. Preservation of open space, balancing the needs of pedestrians and automobiles, encouraging vitality in the village center. I think if anything, this will result in more business activity, not less. It will be sustainable, and we'll make sure it's sustainable. And obviously, again, we will have the experts, people like Tony Piazza and others will be involved, and we're not going to do something that will be bad for the lake. And again, we want to have something that's going to be great for Southampton and for the community, and that's the plan here. Again, one of the motivations is people have said, oh, well, the only people who really care about clean Lake Agawam are the people who live around it. This is everyone's lake. And if you have true public access, it will be like in the 1880s when the public really did use Lake Agawam. And again, one other benefit will be that we have a real opportunity to have a tremendous art district here. Peter Marino has obviously done a lot himself. And people talked a little bit to me about the Parish Art Museum. I gathered that a small bit of opposition basically caused the trustees to say, we're out of here. And this would be a very sad loss, I believe, for the village. And so you could have an incredible, incredible arts district. And Peter Marino is someone, he's created the foundation in the village. He's invested a lot of money in it. He wants this to be part of his legacy. He loves the village. And so, again, we think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's subject to change. We want community input in it. Maybe, I don't know, Mayor, if I can do this, but I'm prepared to answer any question that anybody has. And again, we're prepared to be completely open, give everybody the studies, try to figure out what the best thing is. Nothing is set in stone. And we want to do something that will really bring the community together, not tear it apart. And I recognize, obviously, closing roads down is something that is different. It's a change. But I think when I urge folks to just walk along Pond Lane, walk along and look at the lake, and imagine what it could be like if you actually cleaned up the lake and did all the work that we're talking about, bike paths, vegetative buffers, public space. It would be transformative for the village, and something that I think people's children and grandchildren would be the beneficiaries of for really a long, long time. So I don't know, if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
We're not going to have questions
okay,
here
no
tonight because
problem.
we have a lot of people who want to speak, Bob. You've spoken a lot. Thank you. All right, with that, we are going to open for public comment, and I think Mr. McGuire, you're the elder statesman. I think I told you would get to speak first.
Mayor, I think Jay Deasing wanted to speak on another topic, but he can come up.
Well, I told Mr. McGuire he could go first.
Okay.
Please, you've got to speak into the microphone. Mr. McGuire, you have to speak into the microphone. Yeah.
After that, I feel as though I'm just whistling in the wind, but so I'm not going to really say what I have 3 sentences to say. The first one was to introduce myself. I'm the oldest resident of the lake. I'm 91. I've lived happily on the lake for 60 years. And just an aside, which is almost a joke, for 400 years, I'm the first person in my family, if either my mother or my father, to reach 90. The 90s. So I guess I'm something of a miracle. But after that presentation, I really don't want to go on. But when I was 30 and built my cottage on the edge of the lake at the end of Linden Lane, one of the first things that I did was to donate 11 willow trees to be planted in Pond Lane. And how many of those are still there, I'm not really sure. But I live directly across from what we're talking about here. And it's been a lovely 60 years. And I'm sure it will be wonderful if this arrangement goes through, but it's just into another world. The only gut reaction I have to, of course, it'd be wonderful to clean up the lake. There's no question. I have, for 60 years, I have gone wading in the lake in my wellies to the point that they have sprung holes to pick up trash that you name it, it comes across with the prevailing wind and the prevailing water to my property. Used to be a little, it's a little bay that's carved out by the 38 hurricane. Well, a hell of a lot of trash, cigar butts, etc., and cans and bottles. I've been picking up for 60 years. And anyway,
McGuire,
that's not mostly, I'm just
30
giving you
seconds.
about the lake is filthy. I used to go swimming in the lake years ago. The last time I went to pick up my trash, I realized I went back to the terrace, and I felt my feet squishing in the wellways, and I realized they had given up their life. And I took my socks off, and my feet were red, bright pink. And I immediately took a shower, and the next morning they were okay. But what is said about toxicity in the lake, obviously, is I think is correct.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. Thank you.
Third sentence I was supposed to.
We have to wrap it up, Mr. McGuire. I'm sorry, we have a lot of other people.
Right, was going to be that I hope some of these meetings get very violent, and I hope that a meeting of fellow residents of Southampton will have a very proper and civic end to this meeting, which might go on for quite some time. I can't drive home in the dark, so I'm going to exit.
Thank you. Right. Look, you want to read that?
Jay Deasing would like to speak to the board about Liberty Gardens.
Okay, well, full disclosure, I'm not speaking about Pond Lane. So think of me as intermission. But the reason I'm here is time is of the essence. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak today, and I'm having a brochure passed out, or a flyer. I'm president of the Southampton Association, a community preservation and service group founded more than 60 years ago in the village. And I want to give you all an update on the Liberty Gardens project on County Road 39, a sliver of which is in Southampton Village. Liberty Gardens is sponsored by a not-for-profit named Concern for Independent Living. The association is greatly concerned about the location and impact of this project on our community, and we have repeatedly expressed these issues to the town board. In December, after a fatal shooting at another development on Long Island, where Concern for Independent Living residents were living, we were told the project was off. However, these types of not-for-profits are very profitable. So one can only guess why it has resurfaced, but it has. As a result, we've sought counsel from the law firm of Myers, Swazi, English & Klein, and our concerns were addressed in a letter from Myers, Swazi delivered to the town board on Tuesday. Unfortunately, the steamroller keeps moving. Many of our more than 300 members have significant concerns about the feasibility, safety, and impact of the project, and specifically about the completeness and accuracy of the FEIS, which is a final environmental impact statement, which has been recently submitted. But to cut to the chase, I think the whole issue can be best summarized by one question: where's the beef? Despite numerous meetings, volumes of documents with facts and figures, and a 650-page environmental impact statement, many of these issues that we have raised, the concerns and the inaccuracies, are unmentioned, unexplained, unresolved, or ultimately unbelievable. That's just unacceptable for Southampton Village. The FEIS does not adequately address the unsafe entrance and exit directly on County Road 39, the significant septic and water
30
issues,
seconds.
increased traffic volume and congestion on County Road 39, or the potential development across the road. Additionally, the project was initially marketed as affordable local workforce housing. In fact, it is supportive care, which is not a listed use in our own code. Once approved, this project will not be undone. Our town is already suffering from years of over and unbalanced development. I hope the town board will not add this project to the list of mistakes, but I'm not feeling comfortable. And I'm here to ask all concerned residents and board members to ask our town leaders to reject the developer's findings. They're incomplete and inaccurate. I've provided a summary of the issues, which is being passed out, and the contact information for our town council. I'm asking each of you, our village trustees, and every member of tonight's audience to contact or meet with members of the town council and let them know that this developer has not done his due diligence and that the project must not move forward. We have to hold their feet to the fire. To date, only Cindy McNamara has been vocal about challenging this project. I'd like to thank Mayor Manger for attending Tuesday's town board meeting and for delivering a letter to the town board opposing the acceptance of the developer's final environmental impact statement. And I love you all, whether you're on one side or the other of Pond Lane, please help us. This is so critical to our village. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Kathy, is there a sign-up sheet?
Yeah.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. If anyone is unaware, I'm
Microwave.
You got to use the microphone, Kathy.
I'm the village clerk.
No.
It's all good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Kathy Sweeney, the village clerk. At this time, for public comment, I just wanted to express just a few rules of engagement. I just hope that everyone is civil, maintains their decorum, and you have 3 minutes to speak. I will be addressing 3 names at a time, so when you hear your name, you will come up and you'll stand beside me over here. The first person that I will call up will be Mrs. Ann Yorney, and then she can make her way up. And then following Ann Yorney, I have Tony Piazza and Pat Nadossi and Megan Magger. I have Pat Nadossi and Megan Magger because they're related, so I know they want to come up and speak together. And then once we get through, I'll be calling 3 at a time, just so it keeps everything going. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ann Yanni, and I'm a lifelong resident of this village. I'm here tonight to express my concerns regarding the proposal to close Pond Lane and divert traffic onto Culver Street and First Neck Lane. As a resident of Culver Hill Street, I witness firsthand the traffic patterns on my street. On a daily basis, Culver Street traffic consists of cars parked on the north and the south side, moving cars traveling east and west in between, with bikers, walkers, joggers, and baby carriages on the sidelines. In the summer season, the increase in visitor further complicates a busy, narrow village road. I often witness drivers who do not adhere to the safety of walkers and bikers, and drivers who simply do not grant the right-of-way to other cars. The traffic on Culver Street is going to make it difficult for residents to get in and out of their driveways. I understand there was a traffic study done sometime between April and May, but what good is that? It should be done when traffic is at its peak, Memorial Day through Labor Day. A historic feature of Agawam is the cars that can drive up to the edge of the lake to watch the waterfowl over the pond and view the park activity. This feature is especially important to our seniors, handicapped, and disabled residents who have mobility issues. They're not able to park and simply walk into the park areas as you have proposed. Residents and visitors enjoy taking a ride down Pond Lane to take in the scenery. Do we really need to change something that has worked so well for so many years? Leave Pond Lane open. If you, Mr. Mayor, trustees, and a few select people off of First Neck Lane feel so strongly about closing Pond Lane, let's put it in for a referendum in June and let the public make the decision. A true democracy works in this manner. What is the rush to approve this? Pond Lane has been a public road for many years. Maybe 3 nice houses might have been better, and then we could have collected the tax dollars instead of taking it off the tax rolls. Agawam Park has thrived in its current offering in a quaint town. We do not need a new park to mimic Central Park. The emphasis should be on a sewer treatment plant, not another park. Why not put the sewage treatment plant property Why not put the sewage treatment plant on Pond Lane property and dispose of the water a half a mile out on the ocean? I'm sure this could be accomplished by placing pipes in the bottom of the lake and feed it straight out into the ocean. Pond Lane needs to remain open. There's enough of traffic problems in this village without creating another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, Tony Piazza, speaking as a resident, a village resident at this moment. Sorry? I'm sorry? I'm entitled to 3 minutes as a resident. I was speaking to you as a consultant prior to this. I just wanted to say I'm on the board of a public garden on the North Fork. I'm on all the committees for Longhouse, Parish, and I serve on the board of the Perfect Earth Project, which advocates for nature-based landscape practices. And one of the biggest things I've seen in all of these organizations is lack of funding and lack of endowment for maintenance. Even the projects that I've worked on in East Hampton are poorly funded as far as maintenance goes. So I just want to put out there that the Lake Agawam Conservancy is approaching this very wisely. That's a very large endowment where this property won't go derelict over time. The maintenance can be paid for with the proceeds that come from the endowment's investments. And I personally am just looking forward to a beautiful area to hang out in the village, more than we have now. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
After Mrs. Nadisi, I have Lori Carson, Alan McFarland, and Erin Meany. If all of you can just make your way up.
Please state your name and your address.
Yes.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Megan Nadashi Magyar. I'm on the board of Lake Agawam Conservancy. I'm at 116 Boyson Road. It's going to be
Megan, you can grab the mic.
There we go.
There
Okay,
you go.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out tonight to speak about this, and thank you for giving us all the time to talk about this together. I'm obviously very much in favor of preserving 11 acres along Pond Lane. I think that doing so will forever change how we experience living in Southampton. We have our beautiful beaches. They're amazing. This will create a 4-season oasis where all ages can go. They can listen to birds. They can take walks. It will be beautiful. We will preserve it. We do need to put a buffer on that lake, even if we aren't trying to build a park and garden for the public there. It's crumbling into the lake. It can't stay this way. I think that everybody should understand that the lake is connected to all water bodies. And so it drains directly into the ocean. And to make that ocean water safe, we need the lake to be cleaner. I do understand the concerns about traffic. I think one of the ways we can make this village less congested is to make it more easily walkable and bikeable, and I think this will help achieve that. So thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for listening to me. I do think this is a tremendous opportunity for the public good, and if we don't take every opportunity we can to preserve land, this village will not be sustainable for future generations. I have 3 kids. I would like them to enjoy Southampton the way I do. The direction we're going, they're not going to be able to. We have to do things to save land. This is a gift to the community to be able to do it this way. And there are all sorts of possibilities for how we can make this garden wonderful for everybody. So thank you for thinking about it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Mayor. Oh, into the mic. I watched everybody else do it. So thank you very much. Got it? Ah, okay. Can you hear me? No. How about now? Okay. Good. So, thank you. My name is Pat Nadashi, and despite my close connection to a Lake Agawam Conservancy board member, I actually have a unique perspective on the parks and gardens. For the last 21 years, I have managed and helped manage and maintain a public park in New York City. Carl Schurz Park borders the East River. Between the park and the river, there is a 1/4 mile long esplanade for runners, bikers, and walkers. This must sound familiar. Actually, the specs are very similar. So I'm vice chair of the Carl Schurz Park Conservancy. I am also, which is the first public-private partnership in New York. I've also been the chief fundraiser since 2009, so if you live in that neighborhood, hold on to your wallets, because I move fast. We receive no money from the city of New York. We receive no money from the New York City Department of Parks. We raise it all from individuals in the neighborhood. All of the maintenance every year and a reserve for something that we hope will never happen. But we obviously work very closely with the New York City Parks Department. They own the land. But we are the primary stewards of this park on a day-to-day basis, and we undertake major infrastructure projects. Everyone treasures this small park. It's not actually very hard to raise money for it, because they all feel the same emotions that Oliver Sacks, a renowned neurologist and author, expresses in this quote. All of us have had the experience of wandering through a lush garden and finding ourselves simultaneously calmed and reinvigorated, engaged in mind, refreshed in body and spirit. The importance of these physiological states on individual and community health is fundamental and wide-ranging. Studies have shown recently.
30 seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Okay, perfect. The time in green spaces is associated with healthy aging, really important to me. Better cognitive functioning, could be helpful. Lower blood pressure, not bad. Improved mental health and good sleep. A study of 62 million Medicare beneficiaries showed that spending time in nature protects against the risk of developing certain neurodegenerative disorders. So I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to preserve our lake, to preserve our land, and to preserve our health.
Thank you, Pat.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, village trustees. My name is Lori Carson. For those of you who don't know me, I have lived in Southampton most of my life. Members of my family came here in the late 1800s. My grandfather was mayor for 10 years in the 40s and 50s. My uncle was mayor in the 60s and then went on to become the town supervisor. I presently own commercial real estate on Main Street that my family has owned for over 100 years. So I am very familiar with both the history and politics of this village. While I applaud the Lake Agawam Conservancy on their intentions and efforts to clean up Lake Agawam, I do feel part of their plan is ill-conceived, the least of which is the closing off of Pond Lane to vehicular traffic. I can honestly say that the Conservancy's proposal is one of the most polarizing and divisive plans to come before the village in my lifetime. I had to ask myself, why is that? Well, one reason is the process in which the plan has been presented. It is clear that the Conservancy has been working on this plan for more than 2 years, yet no one in the greater Southampton community knew anything about it. The business community was not consulted, nor were any of the neighbors who live on the adjoining roads to Pond Lane, such as Ox Pasture, First Neck Lane, and Culver Hill. Even some of our first responders knew nothing about it. I ask, where is the transparency in that? For a plan that could have such an impact on our downtown, that is disgraceful. and shows a complete lack of awareness for our community at large. Say what you will about the petition, but it accomplished one thing that neither the Conservancy nor the village administration had done, and that is that it raised awareness and informed the public about this proposal. Pond Lane is not just any street. It is a historic street, a beloved road in the Village Historic District, and yes, listed on the National Register. It has been enjoyed by
30
generations of families for centuries. It is part of the fabric of our downtown, and it allows our residents to drive around the lake and enjoy the scenic views. It also provides a critical north-south thoroughfare for cars going to and from the business district and helps to alleviate congestion in the village, which is already at a tipping point. Pond Lane is part of the culture of this village, as are the ducks. Traffic and safety have been... the Conservancy had an hour to read. I would like to finish.
All right.
I would ask, please. Traffic and safety have been brought up as issues. Is Pond Lane really any less safe than many of the other streets in our village? With the amount of traffic, speeding, and all the construction crews and landscape rigs on our streets, one could potentially get run over on any road at any time. Is the curve on Pond Lane any less safe than the curve on Gin Lane on the opposite side of the lake? And please stop exploiting the death of that young child in 1995. No one else has been killed in 30 years. Despite what others say, Pond Lane is a highly used road. I did a random car count myself. I sat on Pond Lane on Saturday, August 5th from 12:15 to 1:15, and I counted a total of 158 cars. I also sat there on Monday, August 14th from 5 to 6 p.m., and I counted 180 cars. It was a very boring task, but I did it. Assuming the traffic can be diverted to Culver Hill and that it will likely not increase traffic on First Neck Lane is unacceptable. We need independent traffic and safety studies done that are not paid for by the Conservancy. In closing, I would like to say that I remember a time when the Southampton summer residents and the year-round residents worked together in a close and cooperative manner with respect for each other's opinions. It would be nice to get back to such a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
The next one is Erin Meany, and then following is Bob Beck, Sheila Pfeiffer, and David Rung.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Erin Hattrick Meany. I own Topiary Flower Shop in the village of Southampton. And I just want to make one comment about that 90-degree turn on Pond Lane, that the prospect of going into the lake is the greatest speed deterrent in this village. Tonight, we are all here because a small, select group of people have made a decision to do away with Pond Lane. It was buried in a beautiful version of a new park across from Lake Agawam. I can't say I'm opposed to a beautiful park, and I think most of us would agree that a beautiful park is a great thing. It has been stated that Pond Lane is dangerous, which is a wild overstatement. It has also been stated that the road's true intention was for horse carriages and buggies by Mr. Giffra. But there is not a road in this village that was not originally made for horse buggies and carriages. All of these reasons, I feel, are a diversion from what is really at play: greed, political deals, and financial gain. We have gathered well over 1,500 signatures by people who want to save Pond Lane. Roy, your own brother, signed that petition. And instead of looking at these signatures as an indication that maybe it's not such a great idea, you start questioning their validity. As our elected officials, stewards of our community, I feel that you are obligated to respect this petition and your community's input with regards to Pond Lane. I have not had one person, barring trustees, who believes that getting rid of Pond Lane is a good idea. When I hung the sign in my window, Save Pond Lane, some of my siblings said, "Erin, do you think that's a smart idea, owning a business in the village, to make such a bold statement?" And I said, "You're damn right I do." Tonight is an opportunity for you all to see that our community is not in favor of this plan, and that maybe you should rethink your master plan to better serve your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
I have to follow that. I do apologize. By the way, I would like to thank you guys for having us to say a few words. And believe me, from me, Bob Beck, I live on Culver Hill. It's going to be very few. So obviously, I am here against the idea of closing Pond Lane. I don't have to give you all the ramifications why or reasons because they have already been said. I do have one idea that I would like. It would be nice if we could have a question and answer with the Conservancy about the buffer and other items and how they came to those conclusions. I just have one question. Being me as a young kid growing up on Culver Street, I did one of those stupid things. At the end of Culver Street is the start of the runoff, and I opened up the manhole cover and I crawled it from there all the way to the lake. So I'm the only one. But and I was waiting for the tortoise. But I'm here to tell you that I didn't write anything down, but it is a historic road, folks. It is a gorgeous road. It's one of the nicest roads, I believe, in the village. Wyandanch, yes. There is another street, I can't think of the name of it right now, but when you drive down Pond Lane, it's Southampton, and yes, the lake is supposed to be the jewel, and it will be someday. But we should not get rid of Pond Lane. That is the signature, to me. I used to catch fish there as a teenager, as a young boy. I took my daughters there. It just sounds like it's going to be somebody else's backyard, and that is not the way to go. It really disturbs me. I'm trying to hold back my wonderful sense of humor, but it really disturbs me to hear, if you want the garden, then you have to close the public road, Pond Lane. I just want you to remember that. If you want the garden, you have to close the public road, Pond Lane. I don't think that has to happen.
30 seconds.
I don't believe it. I do have one question for the Conservancy. This runoff, I guess it starts where I crawl out of the tunnel there. Could we put in fill? Now that might be a no-no, but put some fill in the lake to give you that 25 feet to preserve the road. I thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila Pfeiffer, Hildreth Street, Southampton. I'm afraid I'm unprepared for the vituperative nature of this meeting. I didn't make any notes. I came mainly to express my delight and my thanks to the many people who have spent a lot of time planning this and have donated an incredible amount of resources and presumably talent to making something that will really beautify our village, including that very raggedy quarter of a mile along Pond Lane that frankly I don't think is very beautiful right now. Just now Bob mentioned that it would become someone else's backyard, but I'm afraid I think after he said that that what it will become is the backyard of the entire village, and we will all have access and all be able to benefit. But I also came to ask one question, which actually Ann Yorney raised, which is, with all this property that's involved, and having heard about how important a sewage treatment plant is, which really I think is the key to a lot of things, is there not room on this large tract of land that's going to become available for there to be a sewage treatment plant, which we have been told can be camouflaged, doesn't have odor, et cetera, et cetera. So I would urge the board, unless you have another plan, to be thinking about that, because I think that everyone in the village is behind a sewage treatment plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila.
After Mr. Rung will be Gary Udell, Carrie Donnelly, and Tish, where's Tish? Ray Hill.
David Rong, 85 Pleasant Lane. A couple of weeks ago, the press had an article about Mr. Marino, and it contained the following quote: "This is a village with real heart and soul. A wonderful sentiment, but it is also a village that discriminates against a segment of the residents by forcing them to pay a disproportionate share of the village tax burden. Residents of higher valued properties are extorting money from residents of lower valued properties. Residents of Windward Way and Dale Street have a village tax ratio 300% higher than residents of Ox Pasture and First Neck. You may not have known about this travesty, but now you do. If you are a good person, and if you actually care about others, you need to demand that this administration change how assessed values are determined. We need to change to a method where all residents are treated the same, and a method that strives for fairness. Note that this administration not only refuses to address this issue, they refuse to tell you even how assessed values are determined. And if you as an individual asked for a calculation of the assessed value on your bill, they refuse to give it to you. And why is that? It's because they've destroyed the records. Now, I think that's a material accounting deficiency, and I think it also opens the village to a huge liability of people who say, I'm not going to pay my taxes if you can't even tell me how the number is computed. So you are people of influence. You have power to force this administration to do the right thing. Parks are important, but people are more important. If you truly believe that this is a village with a heart and a soul, demand that this administration act like they care about all residents, not just those in the estate section. As the expression goes, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Now, just a comment on the Pond Lane proposal. This proposal will increase the real estate taxes of all village residents.
30 seconds,
It will
Mr. Rowe.
increase the real estate taxes of all town residents. This happens because significant properties are being removed from the tax rolls, and those taxes are being shifted to the rest of us. This concern can be made a non-issue by the Conservancy agreeing to make in lieu of payments that would equal to the taxes they would have paid, and that is part of their commitment to absorb the maintenance costs of this work. So again, please be caring people, please be good people, please get involved in this and force this administration to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right, can you hear me? All right. My name is Gary Udell, 56 First Neck Lane, and I love parks. I really do. But, first of all, I bring up, do we really need another park? We all walked here. There was not one person in Agawam Park tonight. We all saw that. Seriously. on Sunday at 1 o'clock, beautiful day, nobody there. So the question is, do you need another park? But in spite of that, I think the main concern that I have is safety. I wrote a letter to the mayor. I said, if you want extra revenue for the village or the town, put a speed camera on First Neck Lane. Nobody goes 30 miles an hour. Everybody goes through, almost everybody, the stop line. You'll never have a debt. I think you should try it. I mean that. People going through stop signs. Just the other day, a woman almost got hit by a dog. By the way, there's no sidewalks on, so there's no sidewalks to protect people. So people are still going to bicycle in the state section. They're still going to walk their dogs. I can't tell you how many near misses I've seen. Just last week, 2 mailboxes were knocked off by somebody. So if you talk about a car accident 28 years ago, I understand that. But I will tell you, right now, First Neck is a very heavily trafficked road right now. The plan as I see it, it's going to get worse. It is. How can it not get worse? Now, I think if I read the statistics, there were 800 cars back and forth on a Sunday. I think that's what I read. So those 800 cars are going to be diverted to First Neck Lane in the estate section. So it makes no sense. I love parks, but my main concern, you're jeopardizing public safety by doing this. So, and one other thing, with all these millions of dollars that everybody wants to donate, I think the citizens, there's residents in this village and town that are hard pressed to make a living and are leaving the village and the town. There are a lot of nonprofit grassroots organizations that can be supported. Probably people don't know there's 5 food pantries within a 5-mile radius. So I think your first investment should be in the residents and the people of Southampton. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Gary.
This is the last call for Kerry Donnelly. Kerry? Oh, it says Kerry Donnelly. My apologies.
Good evening, trustees and fellow residents. I'm Carrie Connolly, and I live at 686 Hill Street. And my concerns are a couple. But coming here tonight, driving east on Hill Street, the traffic going west was at a dead stop. As I crossed, I'm not sure if it was Captain's Neck or Halsey Neck, there was a car that had pulled out into the eastbound lane perpendicular to the westbound traffic because people, the guy was obviously acting badly, but that's what happens because of the really bad traffic situation on Hill Street. The traffic study, which says that it should be ignored because Pond Lane is just a cutoff street, is missing the point. Pond Lane is necessary to avoid the dead stop traffic on Hill Street. The street is required to help the situation. There are not other north-south roads really available to avoid the traffic. There are so many problems now with the traffic that the closure of Pond Lane does not make sense. And I think, although the Conservancy has done an interesting job with their call for fixing the lake, I think those plans were already in the works, and the village has already obtained the algae cleaner, so that is not contingent on this plan whatsoever. I think that more studies should be made of available bioswales, a study of the topography of the houses when you're the land when you're going south on Pond Lane, because that's where the runoff is generated. So there are a lot of solutions that the Conservancy has not included in its report because of its preferred solutions. And I think that further study needs to be made. And I also agree with Mr. Udell that other things are more important than parks. There is also the CPF property, which could be made into a beautiful garden, and public access to the lake itself could be extended by extending the boardwalk and other solutions. And I think that more study and more consideration and more transparency is required. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three after Tish will be Kimberly Allen, Brian Butler, and Mackie Finnerty.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, the board. My name is Tish Hill. I have a landscaping business, and I've worked in the village for 40 years. I applaud the Lake Agawam Conservancy with a game-changing moment for the village of Southampton. Many times it takes a forward-thinking group of people to open our minds as to what could be and have the wherewithal to act quickly. Is there something going on?
What is that?
Good? Nope.
Now. Janice, is that you? Just turn it off.
Okay. Many times it takes a forward-thinking group of people to open our minds as to what could be and have the wherewithal to act quickly. In this instance, John Paulson stepped up to buy time for a plan to be formulated so more development could be stalled. Although a plan has been presented, I do feel that more research and ideas need to be considered before a full plan is signed off on. I understand full well the need to prevent runoff into the lake, but there may be more innovative ways that this can be accomplished without closing Pond Lane. For instance, it may be possible to increase marsh filter footage into the lake and elevated walking paths at both the north and south part of the lake. This has been done at the Gowanus Canal, which is probably more polluted than Lake Agawam, and that's in the process of being done. I drive down Pond many times a week, accessing clients' properties and avoiding traffic. Traffic is a bear, and it's something we're just going to have to deal with. I could use Culver Hill, which I do sometimes, although not as bucolic as Pond. When traveling east to various clients, I will purposely traverse Bridge Lane, as is again a place to slow down and drink in the view. And with Pond, I mean, granted, if we could see the pond a little bit more, if the vegetation was cleaned up, if it wasn't as tall, if it was up-pruned, we would have a more beautiful view of the lake. It is also my opinion that it might be able to still be a one-lane road. If we could push it over, we'd have possibly, and fill in a little, we could gain the 25 feet. So these are ideas that I think need to come forward. What I think should move forward at a rapid pace is purchasing the property from Mr. Paulson with CPF funds. It's a no-brainer. The plans
30
can be
seconds.
reviewed, and maybe Pond Lane becomes a one-way street, which most times it is only one lane given traffic, geese, bicycles, what have you. I just don't agree with the contingency of closing Pond Lane to use CPF funds. If a vote was taken tonight in this room, I don't think there would be a vote against purchase nor development of parkland. As Mr. Giffra stated, the Conservancy wants community input. Well, the conversation has started.
Thank you.
Good evening. Kimberly Allen, 39 Potato Field. I endorse preserving this property and appreciate everyone's efforts. The garden could become a beautiful ornament for this side of the lake for decades to come. However, I don't think you should mask the creation of this park and the closing of the road to being a condition for all the big hype of a bioswale that will clean up Lake Agawam in this location. Everything is subordinate to a much-needed sewer and effective storm water management, especially further up and east of this location. These are game changers. Climate change has intensified with powerful hurricanes and floods, and this is the new normal. Per the Brookings Institute research, this will affect our health, safety, productivity, real estate values, and village bond ratings. And if you don't believe me, here's an example. In one of our biblical rains last month, Pine, Oak, and Meeting House Lane were so flooded that the water breached a residence, creating tens of thousands in damages. One resident saw septic tank overflows sluicing through his street and yard. How are we positioned on a sewer and village vibrancy? Visit West Hampton Beach and you'll see what vibrancy means. Mayor Maria Moore made a sewer happen in under 6 years. A great deal of money and resources are being dedicated to large purchases and annual maintenance obligations that do not necessarily rise to the level of what's critical. I think we should focus on the big problem and endorse preserving the property, but the residents are very concerned about the closure of Pond Lane. One needs to be careful about not creating another problem. We need a strong traffic study that considers a multitude of impacts, particularly diversions from closing this road. We have 50,000 cars barreling over County Road 39. We are choking from traffic. Just think today. A food pantry is opening in the middle of the village, serving over 2,000 clients. To the east. To the west, the first of many cannabis dispensaries are opening up. No one from First Neck can make a left during the busy season. Their only safe option is turning left at the Pond Lane light. I was recently given a history lesson by a 1640 family. Lake Agawam used to be called Job's Swamp and extended all the way to Stop and Shop. Over the years, it was filled in down to where the lawn now sits. Many village businesses still have water problems in their basements after
30
heavy
seconds.
rains, which is why the telephone company had a tough time getting built. When I spoke to John Holden, who turned 20, who passed away before he turned 100, he told me when he was 20, his parents advised him never to swim in the lake, sorry Bob Beck, and not to fish. The tremendous runoff from County Road 39 and the septic issues from this village are still the big problem. Let's hope we can figure out a way of filling in land or coming together, but we do have to focus on the main event.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Good evening. My name is Brian Butler, 31 Rose Avenue, Southampton. A couple of thoughts and a few things on what I've heard. First thing is J.D. Singh. Yes, we're all behind you. As far as going up and down Pond Lane, we've been doing it forever. Somebody had mentioned that it's hard for elderly people to do that. My mom died in the last year. She was 94. I would take her up and down that road several times a week so that she could get the look. As you're going south, it looks like a Henry Kohler watercolor painting. And you get that every single time. Now, as you come the other way off of First Neck, which I do all the time, I always turn onto Pond Lane to go into the village. Now, the traffic studies say, well, you know, First Neck can handle the extra traffic that goes there. First Neck, the problem isn't right at First Neck. The problem is when you go down to First Neck and then you hit Hill Street. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm avoiding that. And that's why I'm making a right and another quick right onto Job's Lane. When I'm coming down Hill Street, coming east, and I see this big backup that we always have, I'm sorry, Linda Beck and Ann Yawney, to say this, I always make a right, and I go down Culver Hill Street to avoid that big traffic jam that is always there. And you just do it. It's a natural thing. You want to avoid traffic, and you know, people will do what they're going to do to avoid it. I understand that some people are worried about traffic problems or safety problems on Pond Lane, don't have all the great answers. Do think that if you're really concerned about the big curve, you could put speed bumps right there, and that would slow down an awful lot of it right there. The last point that I'd like to make is, as far as, I don't know if there are any town board people here, but we've kind of been told, this is it, you take the whole thing or nothing. I'm not against a nice park. I'm certainly not against the system that they want to put in Dowsher Park to clean out the water, clean out the lake. That would be great. But having the sword of Damocles held over our heads that we have to close down this lane is just terrible. And what I'd like to say is, I don't want the CPF to be used to close Pond Lane. And
30
fortunately,
seconds.
because Mr. Deasing was nice enough to give us these phone numbers, I hope you will let other town board members and people who are running for the board and are not yet on it, that you don't want to use the CPF to close Pond Lane. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Mrs. Finnerty, I have Bruce Bachman, Michael Irving, and Stephen Antler.
Good evening, I'm Mackie Finnerty. I'm here tonight to support this idea in many, many ways. I'm sort of shocked at many of the things I've heard tonight. I don't know when America is going to start to take the environment first. That I've heard person after person defend a road, one of the 8 roads that go to our beaches, as the only way you can drive there. I live in the village. I go down all the different roads to all the different beaches practically every day. We really have to turn our attention to the environment, or we're not going to survive, or neither our children or grandchildren. And this is a great plan for the environment. I was also very surprised to hear how terrible it is to close a road. I think most of you are New Yorkers. Has anybody been to Central Park? Have you seen it since they closed the roads? Has that improved it or disimproved it? Everybody loves it. I know you're all, I can tell by your ages, you're here when they closed Broadway. Did we survive that? Everyone said, oh my God, you can't close Broadway. Well, they closed Broadway and everyone loves it. And there's restaurants and people walking and biking. We can handle the closing of a quarter-mile road in this little village. I was also shocked to hear people say, well, parks are not that important to business. I'll bet you're a well-traveled group. Do you go to anywhere else? What on your top 10 list in any city? Is it Central Park? How about going to Boston? How about Rome? How about Paris? How about London? Right away, you say, I want to go to their parks. So the fact that people who think don't come to town to go to a park, I don't know who those people are. And well, look what the High Line did. What a creative idea that was. They come from all over the world now to walk on a park in New York City. We can do the same thing. We can be leaders in this. We can save the environment, at least a little bit. I do think there's some things I do worry about. One of them is the people who live on Lake Agawam. Chris Glober's been here tonight. I think I've been here for 5 mayors to hearings on what to do about Lake Agawam.
30 seconds.
And Chris was part of that. The things that have always been suggested. You need to berm all those houses. You need to move the cesspools to the other side of the houses. You need to stop using fertilizers and washing all that stuff in. There's no use in us spending a lot of money to do something new when Chris has been advocating this for, as he said, 25 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mackie.
I think I can make this work. Good. My name is Bruce Bachman. I live on Ox Pasture, and it's a street which has come up many times this evening. I'd like to, because I'm near the end of this evening, I hope, not attack, but respond to some of the things that have been said that I think are both unfair or are misleading or sending us in the wrong direction. The first thing is I want to commend the Agawam Conservancy and the town officials and the village officials who have put in so much time and effort into this project. There's more thought, capital, cooperation than any project I've seen in the 20 years I've been involved in the village activities. There's been a few people who have implied that there's a profit motive here. I don't believe so. I know the guys who are involved. This is really a community service which they are providing, and I think we ought to treat it in our discussions as a community service with some of our citizens working very hard to do something that's very good for the village. The second thing is, I do live on Ox Pasture, and if I can get out of my driveway because of the traffic, I go down Ox Pasture, down Pond Lane. Probably a household goes up and down Pond Lane 10 times a day. I could have given you the same conclusions as the consultants without charging you a cent. But it basically, it is crowded, it is narrow, it is dangerous, although the accident record says that maybe it really isn't, because everybody goes so slowly. On the other hand, people have said, well, I want to go down Pond Lane, so I'm going to look out on Lake Agawam. You better not do that. I'm glancing out of the side of my eye like this, trying to look at Lake Agawam. You can't do it. So that's just a red herring. That's not really anything that we should even be considering. The next thing is, I do recognize that everybody is interested in Pond Lane. There's some good feeling to it. It's terrific. I would suggest that maybe we try and find a solution that includes Pond Lane.
30 seconds.
How much? 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. So I would suggest we focus on that. The other thing I would suggest is, a lot of people have talked to me about roses. Peter Marino's going to put roses in there. God, he's putting roses in a garden, and we have to complain about it. But I think we ought to consider having Tim Rumpf divide that garden up into 10 sections and put each one out for competitive bid to various garden groups and various landscapers. So I think there's things that are going to be done, but this is a transparent process. There is no motive in this that's bad, and I think we all ought to attack it, deal with it, converse about it positively. And I thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
I'll try to keep this short. It's Michael Irving, 66 Prospect Street, and I want to thank the mayor and the trustees for having this hearing. There's a couple of things I'd like to bring to light. Well, First Neck Lane used to have sidewalks, believe it or not, and they were all blue chip sidewalks, and they ran from the village all the way to the beach, so maybe we can bring them back. But the big thing is I want to clarify Pond Lane. We all are referring to it as Pond Lane. Pond Lane was dedicated as Concert's Way, I think about 5 years ago. And Pars Concert is a significant African American that lived in the village and should be part of whatever the Lake Agawam Conservancy is putting together. They have put together all the lots, 2 lots, the lot that the village took at one time, and they've absolutely ignored the Pirates Concert project. To close that road is significant. It's a historical road. It has deep meanings in the village of Southampton. It used to be years ago, believe it or not, called Frog Pond Lane, and since it switched to Pond Lane, it's still a significant piece of our village, as along there, Pars Concert used to bring his boat back and forth down to the beach. And to close it is a big, big mistake. I see that the village has neglected it in the last 4 or 5 years. There's no paving. They're making it look as horrible as possible, almost as is in an abandonment. I will tell you, the first thing you do when you take a road out of the public's ownership is you declare it abandoned, and then it becomes a taking. And I'm very concerned that the Lake Agawam Association is looking to take Pond Lane. It is our residence road, and we should keep it as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
The last 4 are David Bonnet, Donna Zilkin, Porter, pardon? Zilka, thank you. Donna Zilka, Porter Bibb, and Fran. Okay, good. And then that will be all. If there is anyone else that would like to provide public comment, please come and meet me over here and you can write your name in. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Antler. I'm here with my wife, Carol. We live at 151 Ox Pasture Road, and we have two primary concerns. One is safety. Mr. Mayor, we've been into your police department multiple times concerning the speeding on Ox Pasture Road. And what the response was, we know all about it, and we can't do anything about it. That's not acceptable. Not only is it not acceptable, but by making by closing Pond Road, you accelerate the problem on Ox Pasture Road. And you're aware of that, because everyone who's going down the First Neck Lane now can't make a left. There's no place to go. They have to go to the right, and they come past us. My wife can't get out of the house sometimes. We're sitting there waiting for the cars to pass. Now, when she goes down to the village, she can't get onto Hill Street. She may not be the best driver, but she's not the worst. And she goes down Pond Lane, and then she goes into town. Now, when she gets into town, you say you have a lot of spots, and you're going to bring a lot of people to the park, and you're going to add 40 spots. And in this brochure, it says you have 700 spots within 5 minutes walking distance. Let me tell you what happened tonight. I parked down on Pond Lane. My wife with her cane took 8 minutes to get up here. So there is no possibility that you have 700 spots within 5 minutes of walking into the park. So that's misleading and incorrect. So those are the two main issues. The other thing I would comment on, a gentleman here was talking about all the soot coming out of that black pipe. It needs a drain. Why didn't anybody put in a drain? Why didn't they put in a filter to reduce it? They just left it there, just like they neglected the road to make it look worse. It doesn't look right. You folks have put in a lot of time, and I admire you for it. I know you mean well, but it doesn't work for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is David Bonnet. I've lived on Lake Agawam for 20 years, not 60 years. And 16 years ago, my neighbors Chuck and Ellen Scarborough and I, along with Whit and Helen Stevens, founded the Lake Agawam Conservation Association, the predecessor organization to the present Lake Agawam Conservancy. So I've been working on Lake Agawam for 16 years of the 20 years I've lived on Lake Agawam. It's interesting to hear the comments from folks who have lived in our beloved village for so long and have worked in many ways to improve the character of the village, but where has everybody been for Lake Agawam? I understand that many people have lived here for a long time. I understand the concerns that have been raised about Pond Lane, but where's everybody been? Lake Agawam is a disaster, and it's the particular responsibility of many of us who've been here so long. I've tried for 16 years, and I'll keep trying. But I hope what comes tonight is a renewed effort from everybody to help clean up the lake, because it's been this way for a long, long time without much help. So it really puzzles me in this day and age why anyone is arguing in favor of cars for their own view, their own drive. The age of Robert Moses is long gone. Unless one hasn't been paying attention lately, the age of the automobile is waning steadily in favor of environmental safety and other good reasons. Just look. It's hard to imagine anybody making a rational argument in favor of driving Pond Lane versus the enormous common good of a beautiful park with pedestrian and bike access. I actually lived on Pond Lane when I first came at 208 Pond Lane, right at the point where Pond Lane curves. It's very dangerous. When I came out of my driveway, there were several near misses all the time. And I'd like to see how many people are comfortable walking their children and grandchildren in strollers today on Pond Lane. It is a real safety concern. What people also don't remember is that Pond Lane is actually closed quite often to cars at one point or another during the summer for walks, runs, and races for different charities. The police close Pond Lane during these times for safety reasons, and rightfully so. So it really is time. In all the work I've done over these 16 years with the various mayors of the village, various village and town trustees, I would imagine many of them are saying, I wish I could have done more for Lake Agawam when I was in office. Well, that time is now for our current elected officials, and I'm confident they will finally make the right decision this time for the citizens of our beloved special communities. It's a quarter of a mile. It's really time. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Hello. I was not intending to speak at all. That's why my glasses are on top of my head. But when I got here and listened to everything, there are a few remarks that I do want to make. I want to acknowledge the Southampton, the Agawam Conservancy, and all the work that they've put into it and the thought. Now, here are my thoughts. I live at 28 Raymond's Lane. It's in the Roscoe area. On the way down here, I remembered, because I was in a rush, that I forgot to lock the back door to my house. I couldn't get back, actually, to lock that door that was unlocked because the traffic on Hill Street wouldn't permit me. But then I thought, okay, I can make the right on Pond and go back and make a right. I'm not a through traffic person, and I think in all of this traffic study, you've forgotten one thing. I can invite people to my house on weekends in the summer because there's no traffic on Hill Street. I can't invite people to my house in the summer during the week because there's too much traffic. I don't do through traffic. I go to Halsey Neck and I make a right turn. It is my only way of getting home if there's an emergency or anything like that in the summer. So the second thing I thought about is this is going too fast. I think we need to, I was on the board of university, and the president always said, we're all so woke, but we need to get in some more conservative thoughts so that we can have both sides of an issue and actually speak about it. So I think this is going a little fast, and I think we need to take some time to speak more about it. The other thing that occurred to me is you're going to build a park. Who are we attracting to a very big park? On the weekends, in the summer, there is not one parking space because of all the day trippers going to the beach. Who do we want more coming from other places to go spend more time in Southampton when we're overly congested already? That's just my opinion, but I think that's one thing. The other thing is, I was sitting next to the Heart of the Hamptons lady. I like that organization. I contribute to a lot in Southampton, but I contribute a lot to that organization. I do the polar bear plunge. You want to raise private funds for this park. We're not New York City. New York City, has a lot of places to raise private funds
30
from.
seconds.
Where we're going to take away, I think, from other deserving charities. And so maybe there should be some other way to fund it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Donna.
Good evening. My name is Porter Bibb. I live at 92 Tuckahoe Lane.
You can lift that microphone, Porter.
Okay. Hi. My name is Porter Bibb. I live at 92 Tuckahoe Lane, and my East End bona fides really amount to the fact that my mom gave 52 acres of oceanfront property between Amagansett and East Hampton to the Nature Conservancy. I'm no expert on Southampton gardens or even the traffic problems of Pond Lane, but I do spend a lot of time and have worked for several years creating an alternative for all of you to think about as a public enterprise. Southampton is the only village in the East End that has no windmill, and the windmill that it had for over 200 years sits on Southampton, Stony Brook Southampton's campus. And I've been working with many other citizens of the village to bring it back, and it's an easy public project that will give Windmill Lane a new lease on life, not cause any controversies on environment or traffic or anything else, and it won't cost the village a penny. It's all going to be supported by private contributions. I hope that you will give some attention to that project, because I can't understand this Pond Lane Southampton Gardens situation. And all I know is that if you have a great garden that Peter Marino has designed, you got to have a fence around it, or the deer will get it all. And I gather that if you have a fence, it's probably going to have a gate, and that gate will probably be locked a lot of the times. So thanks a lot.
I have two more folks after Fran, Brendan Johnston and George Buxton. Is there anyone else that would like to provide public comment that can come speak with me? Otherwise, after Mr. Buxton, this concludes the public comment.
I don't think I need a mic anyway. Fran Adamczewski, 40 West Prospect Street. Lived here 62 years of my whole life. Mother was born here, raised here. A gentleman said he used to climb in a drain and go to Lake Agawam. Well, I've done that. And it does come out at the lake. Be surprised. So I'm all for about preserving land, but this, we don't need another park. It's like, we're not New York City. People come here to go to the beach. The beach is the main reason why people come here. Not to go to our parks. Agawam is beautiful. Like everybody said, there's nobody in the park when we got here. And there's probably nobody there now. So keep the road open. Try to preserve the land. We need to create some kind of sewer system that doesn't drain into the lake, because that's the big issue of Lake Agawam being polluted. It's been polluted ever since I was a little kid. Used to go carp fishing, and it was green then. My mother used to say, stay away with your white sneakers, because you're going to come home with green sneakers. So we need to come up with a formula to stop the road runoff from going into Lake Agawam. And no matter how much you filter that water, the sediment on the bottom of that lake is so toxic that we have to get rid of that stuff first to clean the lake. So, and congratulations, we finally got a chief of police. Sorry to sidetrack that, but thank you. So, I'm all for keeping the road, preserving land, but the park is not a good thing. So, put the money towards the drainage, cleaning our lakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brendan Johnston. I live at 37 Pond Lane. Oddly enough, I guess I'm the only resident who lives on the street appearing tonight. I grew up on the corner of Ox Pasture and First Neck, so I've spent my entire life driving up and down this street. I am really torn on this issue. It's very complicated. What I know I'm for is cleaning the lake, and I'm absolutely for a park. I think any opportunity that you have to create public land should be fought for and gained. I know, Friedrich Lolmsted fought enormously hard to carve out Central Park, and the city would almost be unlivable without it. Now, I know it's very different here, but if you look at the aerial view, everything is basically privately owned. When it comes to Pond Lane, my main concern is safety. There was an experience I had years ago. I was driving around this curve, and a lady was biking in front of me, and a car coming around this way went into the middle to get around a pedestrian on this side. She swerved out of the way of the car, hit the edge of the road, fell forward, hit her face on the road, and split her lip open. And I stopped my car to help her out, and ambulance came, police showed up. But at the end of it, I was covered in this poor woman's blood, and it was a pretty harrowing event. I live in the house right here, and I have a 2-year-old son, and cars do drive down the street extremely quickly with very little regard as to who's walking on it, biking on it, and walking their dog. I'm not necessarily arguing that it needs to be closed, but I'm saying it can't continue in its current form. I think that room for pedestrians does need to be made, and room for cyclists as well. So I don't know exactly how this is all going to pan out, but there's a lot to think about.
Thank you, Brendan.
I did have one addition. Victoria, Kirsten, and then lastly will be Mr. Buxton.
I come from very near Southampton in England, and I've now been here in Southampton, New York for 60 years. Love, love, love the town and the village. I just feel, listening to everybody today, great ideas, good ideas, some not so good. I just think that we can have everything. We can have Pond Lane, we can have the swale. We've just got to compromise. And if everyone can get together, we can do it all. Have the bioswale, everything. So I hope we'll all get together and get it all done, and we'll get everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Good evening. George Buxton, 39 First Neck Lane. My wife and I, Kathy, live there. You're all probably very relieved that I'm the last speaker. And because so many people have articulated very good points on both sides, I've actually eliminated 3/4 of the speech, so you're in luck. Before I start, I just want to say one thing. I live in Manhattan as well. Please do not make an analogy to closing Pond Lane to Central Park. Central Park is the wild, wild west. There have been a plethora of deaths between bicyclists and pedestrians. Don't think that you're not going to get the same thing here. I just want to be very clear. If you don't believe me, good luck and go walk there. It's very dangerous. Listen, no fair-minded person objects to a beautifully landscaped garden. Nobody. Park. No one is against restoring the health of a polluted lake. These are laudable goals. We understand that. However, I don't believe that you should close Pond Lane because I think you can have a coexistence. I think Pond Lane needs improvement, but there's no reason to close it and still not try and accomplish the other things you're doing. I find the Lake Agawam Conservancy, I appreciate all the work they've done. I find it, frankly, I've read their proposal. I find the conflation of events misleading and maybe confusing to me. They want to close the lane, they want to clean the park, they want to clean the lake, they want to create a park, and at the same time move industrial equipment to another park. I don't understand all of this. I hope the trustees do. What I do understand is that I'm against closing Pond Lane for two reasons. One, the congestion of traffic is the highest it's ever been. Just go, if you don't believe it, go outside. Two, Pond Lane is as has been already mentioned, is an historic road. I think the trustees at least should go and talk to the Architectural Review Board and to consult with them and ask them, look, can you please help us understand what we're dealing with? Because I think they might be able, it's their jurisdiction and they might be able to give you some light on it. In conclusion, the trustees have a responsibility to voters, of course, but to landowners, homeowners, commercial tenants, taxpayers. All their policies, all the policies that you adopt have got to be to generate the greatest good for the greatest number. That's your obligation. With that said, I know that you have a very difficult job, and I'm not criticizing any motives. I'm simply saying that I think we want you to be fair, transparent, open, and reasonable in the passage of significant things. I'm done in 5 seconds. In the passage of significant resolutions. The process has to be orderly and not precipitated. And it makes me think a little bit of what John Maynard Keynes, who was a famous English economist, said. He said, when the facts change, I change my mind. I trust that the village trustees can do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for being here for the public comment portion of this evening's meeting. We will now go to the public hearing portion, and people can also comment on public hearing portion as well. But I'll turn it over to our village administrator for the public hearing portion.
Yes. Resolution, so the public hearing number 1 to amend pass local law 14-2023, the proposal to amend chapter 116 waterfront laws zoning, specifically section 116-9A 3, 116-9A 10A, and 116-9A 11A. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make a motion to open the hearing?
Yeah, we'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is anyone like to be heard on this public hearing?
Maybe Andrew could explain what it is.
Andrew would like to speak about it?
As a brief,
You have to turn your mic on. Is the green light on?
green light's on.
Oh,
How about now?
Now.
that's better.
Okay. Mayor, this proposed local law is identical to the proposed local law that was adopted by this board approximately 6 weeks ago. And the reason why it is on for public hearing again is that the proposed local law has now been forwarded to the Suffolk County Planning Commission, and this board is not in receipt of comments adverse to local determination. So nothing, but again, nothing has changed in this local law, in the proposed text of this local law from the last time considered by this board.
Okay. Well, if there is nobody that wants to be heard on this public hearing, I will make a motion to close this public hearing.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Public hearing number 2, local law 17-2023, the proposal to amend chapter 116 zoning, specifically chapter 116-14, sections 1 through 5, off-street parking, truck loading space, and curb cut construction. Mr. Mayor, would you like
Yes,
to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to open this public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone wishing to be heard on this public hearing? And Andrew, would you
Sure.
like to just again bring this up again?
A brief introduction to this proposed local law is to modify the off-street parking requirements for driveways, and specifically, it's a definitional change to allow the consideration of stacking of parking. And the functional change is that where off-street parking required a number that was generated based on moving only one vehicle in a stack, 2 vehicles can now be moved. So as a practical matter, a driveway that is 3 cars deep used to be considered space for 2 vehicles, because only one car would move and in order to calculate the space. Now 2 vehicles can move, so a driveway that is 3 cars deep under the code will have space for 3 cars.
Yes. No, they're not understanding it. Actually, Michael Anderson, I feel like this is something that you were involved with. So would you like to come forward and maybe speak about it? Since I feel that this was precipitated because of something on your street. Thank you. And Michael Anderson is a member of our planning commission, so welcome you down to the podium here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I brought this to your attention, what happened to me
In the microphone.
on Front Street where I live.
Is that mic on, folks?
How's this, better?
No.
Can't be the mic.
Now it's on.
Okay. What transpired across the street from my house is there was a driveway that went to the back of the garage to my neighbor's house. And they lived there for years. Everything was fine until this house was sold. And the people that bought the house decided that the back of the yard was not big enough. So they wanted to stop the driveway and basically for a bigger backyard and put in a parking lot in front of their house. And basically they have 30 feet from the village property line to the front of their house, and they have 4 parked cars there now. And there was no rules and no regulations to prevent them from happening. I went to the building department several times. Nothing I can do. They're there now. And unfortunately, when I brought it to the attention of the mayor, when he was a trustee, he told me he realized the severity of the situation, and now that's why he's come to this conclusion. I don't really know how you're addressing the problem. The double cars in the driveway, you're making the driveways wider?
No, it would allow people to have their cars stacked in the driveway as opposed to having to create a parking lot in the front yard of the driveway to accommodate the additional vehicles, per bedroom. So, for example, if they have the driveway going back to a garage, they could stack the cars in the driveway portion, and that would be sufficient for the number of bedrooms in the house, as opposed to what is happening now is they are having to accommodate cars not in a stacked fashion, but on another portion of the property, so that again they're taking up in your situation
right
on Van Brunt a front yard to again accommodate the cars in parking places that are required as to the number of bedrooms in the house.
Well, I appreciate all your help. Thank you.
It's a minor change, but I'm hoping that it makes a small difference, and again will prevent people from having to always create these parking lots in the front of the house.
What maybe we could look at in a future time, because as I said earlier, there was 30 feet between the front of the house and the village property line, and they were able to create 4 parking spots in front of their house. And how that can happen, and if it was a 100-foot setback property, it was 100 foot or 200 feet, I could understand it. But when it's a 30-foot setback, it's the law should not let them do that, in my opinion.
No, understood.
Thank you.
And does anyone else want to be heard on this local law, this public hearing portion?
I do, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Trustee Stevenson.
I respect Mr. Anderson's concern about having people park their cars in front of their house, but we've just spent, 2.5 hours listening to people concerned about open space, the village's rural nature, traffic, too many cars on the street, and I believe this change in code will exacerbate all of those problems. The only time you have to pay attention to how many parking spots you have in your property is when you are building a new house or when you are enlarging your old one. That is when you have to get a building permit, and that's when it comes before the building department, who checks out, do you have 2 spaces plus 1 for each additional bedroom. So what this law does is permit those people who want to enlarge their house, because if all they want to do is put in a swimming pool, they don't have to go before the building department. They can just put in a swimming pool. Well, this is happening when people want to enlarge their house and create another bedroom. They go before the building department and they have to prove they have sufficient parking spots. So what this law will do is allow them to get credit for spots that require them to line up cars one behind the other, behind the other. Now, nobody's going to move 2 or 3 cars to get to the one in front if that's the one they want to drive. They are going to do this to get the legal number of spaces, but they are going to end up putting their cars on the street instead of stacking them one after another in their driveway. That's clear. So we're going to have more cars on the street, which is going to exacerbate the problem we already have of people trying to drive down our narrow streets and saying there's too many cars and they shouldn't be there. We've even talked about all these landscapers, and we don't want them parking on the street, but how are they going to park in the driveway if there's 4 cars stacked up there? Now, I understand Mr. Anderson's concern about having cars in the front lot. Well, this doesn't even stop that. You can still put a parking stub in the front lot if you want to. Why don't we look at changing the code to tighten the restrictions on putting vehicles in the front of the house? That seems to me to make way more sense than making this code revision, which has many unintended consequences, to my mind, most of them bad. So I just think that somehow this sort of popped out of nowhere. Let's add more stacking. If anything, we want to reduce people maxing out their house size on their lots. This allows them to do that, because then if they don't need parking spot, they can put house on it. So I think it's short-sighted, and I wish we would study it more before we move forward with it. Okay.
If I may.
Michael, you want to come back?
Yes, if I may. Trustee Stevenson, that's a great point that you did bring up. But in this instance, the person was not adding on to the house. What she wanted to do was improve the property. She didn't even require a building permit at first. She only got a curb cut permit that no one even knew about. From what I found out, they just had to go to the superintendent of Public Works to get the curb cut. And the whole house property was basically redesigned, not through the building department permit, but through the supervisor giving them a curb cut. Mm-hmm. And that's, like you said, maybe more study needs to be put into it.
But it's not clear even that this change would then have solved the problem. She might like the idea that she's got the cars in front now, and as I said, this change doesn't prohibit that from happening. She still could have gotten the curb cut and put the cars exactly where they are right now, even if we adopt this resolution.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else want to be heard on this topic? Mindy, come forward. Come on down.
Come on down.
Mindy Fortin, 190 Little Plains Road. Having recently built a house, I think something that we really wanted that might help this is a semicircle in front. And we were not allowed to have that because of a certain width. But I think everybody would agree that a semicircle driveway in the front is much nicer looking than cars parked like that. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you could look at not the law, but the regulations, why we couldn't do it, but I think everybody would agree, because now we have stacks, but people have to park on Little Plains Road also. If we had a semicircle, it'd look much prettier, and we wouldn't have people parked on the road. That's it. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. All right, anyone else on this public hearing? All right, I'll make a motion to close this portion of the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, communications to the board.
Okay, we have a lot. So we have a correspondence from Todd Johnson regarding the condition of beach grass and requesting that the village board take a look at beach driving, traffic on the beach. We have correspondence from Sheena O'Sullivan and Gina Liotti, both supporting and commending the work done with the junior lifeguard program this summer. We have correspondence from Alexandra Knight, Christina Floyd Didana, both supporting the Southampton Gardens and the closing of Pond Lane. We have correspondence from Dr. Georgette Greer-Key, considering the fact that she had sent a video to the board members and requested that they review it and consider the Pyrus Concert Homestead and that be incorporated into Southampton Gardens. We have correspondence from Ann Nordman, Diana Taylor, both supporting Southampton Gardens and the closure of the road. We have correspondence from Bob Beck against the closure of the road in favor of the garden.
He spoke.
Yes, he did. Correspondence from Pete Topping, who is the Peconic Baykeeper, supporting the closure of the road and the Southampton Gardens. Correspondence from John and Carol Wobst, opposing the closing of Pond Lane. Correspondence from Eugene Niven Goodman, supporting the closure of Pond Lane. Mark Fitchandler, Pat Nodisy.
She spoke.
Yes, supporting the closure of the gardens enclosure. The Brock and McMahon families supporting the Southampton Gardens and closure. Linda Hackett, supporting the park and has concerns about the closing of Pond Lane. Martha McLannan, questions about the closing of the use of the park. And Jeff Broadleaf supporting the closure of Pond Lane and the park.
Okay, thank you very much.
All of which were attached to the online agenda and are available for view and will be made part of the public record.
Thank you very much. I wanted to call now upon our Chief Hurto to talk about the possibility of adding some additional parking on Layton Avenue. We've had some, again, requests from some of those on the south side of Layton Avenue for some additional parking there. So I would like Chief Hurto to talk about that.
Okay, so as we know, most of Layton Avenue on one side is no parking. It has limited parking spaces, especially in front of the condominiums. What we're looking to do is do a temporary trial. First, it was 2 parking spaces. It was going to be at the intersection when you turn onto Layton Avenue from North Main. We wanted to put 2 additional spots there because there really is limited parking there, and a lot of the residents were complaining. Myself and the mayor took a ride down there. We looked. We were like, okay, we can do this. We checked with Dean. He did some measurements. The more I thought about it, the more I feel that we can only get away with 1 spot. When you make the turn onto Layton Avenue, I think 1 spot is safer than 2, because if you make the right turn onto Layton from North Main, what's going to happen is, and we saw it down there a couple of times today, you're going to make the right turn, the car's going to have to go into the oncoming lane of traffic, and the other vehicle coming westbound, there could be a collision. And it's a safety concern of mine, not only for motorists, but also for pedestrians walking in the area. If we add the 1 spot, we can move it, we can put it as far up just west of the driveway at 14 Layton Avenue. So it won't interfere with any residents on the opposite side backing out or obstructing their view. And I think we should try that maybe for 30 to 45 days. That would be up to the board.
Okay. They might not be completely happy with me, but I'm going to say it's the chief's fault.
That's fine. That's fine. That's what I'm here for.
All right, so we'll try that. We'll have to talk to Steve Phillips about maybe proper signage.
Yep.
So that we can do this as a trial before we have to change the law possibly. And Andrew, I just want to make sure legally the chief has the ability to do a trial on Layton Avenue for a parking situation like that?
As I understand this, it would involve the chief's discretion to not enforce a no parking restriction on one particular parking space, which I believe is within police power for her to do.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear, though, that this additional parking spot, it's a public roadway, so it's a first come, first serve.
Right.
Just like the other
No,
parking
yes,
spots.
it's not reserved for anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the next portion of the meeting, mayoral appointments.
Mayor Menger respectfully requests a motion to approve the following committee and department designations for a term ending June 30th, 2024. Department Liaison for Code Enforcement, Trustee Leonard Zananti, and Southampton Cultural Center, Trustee Leonard Zananti.
So I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, congratulations, Trustee Zananti.
Thank you, Mayor.
Number
Next.
2, resolve that the Board of Trustees accepts the letter of resignation from Barbara Wilson, Village Justice of Southampton Village Justice Court, effective September 1st, 2023. Is there a motion?
I will make the motion.
I'll second it.
Just discussion, I would just like to thank, again, Judge Wilson for her service to the village for 21 years, I believe, serving as the village judge, and wish her well in her next endeavors, and again, thank her on behalf of all the village residents for her service to the village of Southampton.
Hear, hear.
I'll second that.
Here, here.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Resolution number 3, resolve the Mayor Menger appoints Linda Riley Esquire to the position of Village Justice of the Village of Southampton effective September 14th, 2023, pursuant to New York State Village Law, Section 3-3123B, at an annual salary of $42,000.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All in
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Linda, would you like to say anything? We're glad you're our new village justice.
Yes.
Thank you for your willingness to serve.
So we have suggested resolutions. Number 1, resolve.
So can we just take maybe a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Yeah, we've been going at this for a little while. I think maybe we need a 5-minute
bring
break,
your
if that's
oath
okay.
Did you bring oath book? Okay, so.
Are we allowed to take a 5-minute break? It's
You're
live?
Okay.
Okay, we'll just, yeah, we can take a 5, we're gonna still take a 5-minute break even though it's live. Turn.
What? It's right up there.
Thank you, Linda.
were there with the gas leak blower thing, right? You were there when I put the task force together from everybody. Not everybody was happy, but they came to a compromise. And I'm
Something like this, you tend to get over-representation of people who are against it.
well, I said decided majority needs to come out and speak. So I had pretty much I had a little bit. Oh no, I checked it off. It's more in favor than against.
Once you put in the letters, it was definitely.
Yes, and then I met like Peter Bulish. Goes, why wouldn't somebody want that? Who cares about that road? That road is no good for the lake and blah blah blah. And I says, well, why don't you come and speak to me? Come and say something, because everybody knows you. You're a year-round person. You know, you have a business here, but then they don't come and speak. I have been getting.
Bonet's points were great.
Bonet was very good.
I like the bike, so why do I have to take a back seat to some asshole in their car?
Okay, so I started walking there, and I walked there on a Thursday morning, I walked there on a Saturday morning, and it's true. It's the bikers and walkers. And any car that came down was just using it as a cut.
It's 5 minutes.
And you can't see the lake anyway at this point. So.
I thought so too. I thought it was very civil. Maybe people aren't angry anymore. If it was Jesse, they'd probably be really mad.
I couldn't tell because I was trying
I'll tell
to.
myself.
It seemed
We're
like
gonna
everybody
get
was
better.
laughing about everything.
I know. It was a split group. It was a split group.
The only comment that really ticked me off was Michael Irving's. I mean, we're working on Paris concert.
Yeah.
All right.
I know.
We're going to start up again.
Well, he's leaving it to the young one.
All right, stage seven, ready to go.
Okay, we'll go to the suggested resolutions now, please.
Resolution number 1, resolved that the claims for the warrant dated September 14th, 2023, totaling $951,212.32, warrant A9, General Fund, $169,994.13, warrant H4, Capital Fund, and $15,617.85, warrant A10, Utilities Fund, are hereby audited and approved. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 2, resolved that the reading of the minutes for the public sessions of August 2023 are dispensed, accepted as filed by the village clerk, and the actions taken at the meeting are hereby ratified and approved. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 3, resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Incorporated Village of Southampton approves local law 14-2023, the proposal to amend Chapter 116 zoning, specifically sections 116-9A3, 116-9A 10A, and 116-9A 11A. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 4, resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Incorporated Village of Southampton approves local law 17-2023, the proposal to amend Chapter 116 zoning, specifically Chapter 116-14, Sections 1 through 5, off-street parking, truck loading space, and curb cut construction. Is there a motion?
I think there's a motion to table this.
Motion to table?
Second.
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion is tabled. Resolution number 5, resolved the Board of Trustees approves the following attached budget modification for fiscal year end May 31st, 2023 for various budget shortfalls. It's included in the packet. This was as a result of year-end adjustments that were made when the books were closed. Just a few housekeeping items, transferring money from one.
Didn't we do this at the last meeting?
Yes, this was an additional.
Yeah, but there's additional.
Okay. All right, I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution number 6, resolved that the Board of Trustees directs the Finance Department to make the following budget modification. Decrease in line number A5112-21 permanent improvements paving in the amount of $100,000 and increase in A5112-22 permanent improving drainage in the amount of $100,000. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second, discussion. I'd just like to explain because let people know that we do see the need for the improvements and care of the drainage in the village, and which is in more need than the paving. So it was on my recommendation, together with Superintendent of DPW, Steve Phillips, to move this monies, and this work is already being scheduled to take care of drainage that we need. A lot of it is antiquated, and it's kind of like what happens in the city. You have pipe breaks and things like that, and we'll be moving along with also cleaning out some of the sumps that we have. We're having a new excavator come that we're purchasing actually, and they're going to start cleaning out some of the pumps. So we are working very hard on these drainage issues that have been neglected for years.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 7, the Board of Trustees approves the following budget transfer necessary to upgrades of Agawam Park and Windward Way Park playgrounds from A711041 Park Supplies in the amount of $23,893.43 to A7110-44 Parks Contractual in the amount of $23,893.44. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 8, resolved that the Board of Trustees accepts the anonymous donation in the amount of $4,000 for the restoration of Old Town Pond Dock, and be it further resolved that the budget is hereby amended to reflect the donation as follows. Increase in A2703, gifts and donations in the amount of $4,000. Increase in A7110-41, park supplies in the amount of $4,000. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 9, the Board of Trustees approves the purchase of the annual subscription of the Debt Book software solution for the Treasurer's Department to use in implementing GASB 87 and GASB 93 for the lease and software subscription management in the amount of $8,000 plus $1,500 in implementation costs, funds to be utilized from A1010-443 Trustees Special Projects, and authorizes the mayor and/or village administrator to execute the contract with Fifth Asset Incorporated doing business as Debt Book. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I'll second it.
Second, Trustee Zananti. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 10, resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby amends Resolution 2022-1267 in accordance with Suffolk County Legislature Resolution number 400-2023 as follows. The Board of Trustees hereby approves the allocation of the received amount in Community Development Block Grant funds, with $25,000 allocated to the Southampton Daycare Center and $10,000 allocated to Heart of the Hamptons, and authorizes the mayor or designee to execute any documents that may be required to receive such funds. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 11, resolved that the 2023 capital budget is hereby amended to fund the purchase of a 2023 Yamaha jet ski for the Coopers Beach lifeguards to use as a rescue watercraft in the amount of $20,000, including a trailer, as a 2023 model is immediately available and the 2024 models are back-ordered through July 2024. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 12, resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the usage of the non-prevailing wage rate rental rates for the DPW Highway Department. The rates are synonymous with the adopted Town of Southampton highway rates of outside vendors and their equipment for snow, sand, and storm-related brush removal for 2023. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second. Discussion. just should like to explain that this is so we are already preparing for any impending snowstorms. And we'll have a list of vendors and everything will be set up in case we have to bring in additional help to take care of any storms that we may have.
And hurricane debris.
And hurricane. We hope not. We hope, sorry.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution 13, the Board of Trustees approves Stephen Phillips, Superintendent, Department of Public Works, and Deputy Mayor, DPW Liaison, Gina Aresta, to attend the annual NICOM Public Works Training School from October 16th to the 18th in Lake Placid, New York. Registration, training, hotel accommodations, and travel expenses are not to exceed $2,000 each. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Does Lou know about this?
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Don't worry.
Resolution number 14, the Board of Trustees approves the employment policy for non-represented employees, which is attached in the agenda handout packet. Just as a discussion item, the board had adopted the department head policy last year. We know that the other employees, the represented employees, are covered under their different collective bargaining unit, but this left a little bit of a void for the employees who are not represented in the collective bargaining agreements and also are not department heads. So basically, it just formalizes the benefit package that they're currently receiving with their health insurance and their vacation time. So is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 15, resolved that the Board of Trustees approves Michael Cause as a probationary member of Fire Police Company Number 1, effective September 14th, 2023. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Resolution number 16, the Board of Trustees approves the salary increase for Rovit Morales, Secretary to the Planning Board, Assistant to the Building Inspector, Ordinance, and Foil Officer in the Building Department at a new salary of $62,500 effective September 8th, 2023. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 17, the Board of Trustees retroactively approves the hiring of the Coopers Beach lifeguard at a rate of $20 an hour, effective August 29th, 2023. Johan Montero. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution number 18, the Board of Trustees approves Southampton High School to host its annual Welcome Back Beach Party at Coopers Beach on Friday, September 15th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. This event will be pre-coordinated with our DPW, and SBOR is volunteering to chaperone the event. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 19, the Board of Trustees retroactively approves the written request submitted by Alex King from Southampton Village Ocean Rescue to volunteer as lifeguards for the surface healing event at Ponquag Beach on Tuesday, September 12th, 2023, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second. Brief discussion. I just want to, this has been bubbling along for a while. The Ocean Rescue Group wanted to participate and help with the surface healing event by acting as lifeguards, but it was outside of the jurisdiction of the village, and there were some concerns about insurance coverage. And I want to thank Administrator Cagle Betts and Attorney Preston for working together to get us a rider to our insurance policy, which then provided coverage for our village ocean rescue team to participate. And I really want to commend Chief King for then getting a donation in the amount of, what, about $1,000 or a little bit more?
$1,100, yes.
$1,100 to cover the cost of that insurance rider. So thanks to her, we were able to provide her organization to make sure this event was safely carried out. And I just want to thank everybody for taking care of that.
Thank you.
Did we have a vote?
So all in favor?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution number 20, resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the Southampton Union Free School District, assisted by AMSEAS, Atlantic Marine Conservation Society, to host a beach cleanup at Cooper's Beach on Saturday, September 16th, from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 21, the Board of Trustees approves the request from Southampton Public Schools to utilize the Southampton Village Showmobile for the annual homecoming pep rally on Tuesday, September 26, 2023, with a rain date of Wednesday, September 27, 2023, at 7 p.m. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 22, resolved that the Board of Trustees approves the temporary closure of the North Road of Agawam Park near the Soldiers and Sailors Monument for a Ferris wheel to be installed for the Southampton Fest event, September 29th to October 1st. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 23, the Board of Trustees approves the village to authorize a sidewalk sale permit for the upcoming 2023 Southampton Fest, scheduled on Saturday, September 30th, from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. All store owners/managers must submit a permit to Village Hall by Friday, September 29th at 4 p.m. and comply with the rules and regulations as stated in said permit. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Resolution number 24, resolved the Board of Trustees approves Little Lucy's Boutique to hold its 22nd annual Pet Parade Festival on Saturday, October 28th, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Festivities will include the Pet Parade on Job's Lane, followed by a festival at Agawam Park. Coordination with DPW will be arranged to provide tables, chairs, and showmobile for the event. The rain date is Sunday, October 29th, from 1 to 4 p.m. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any-
Woof, woof, woof.
Woof.
Resolution number 25, resolve the Board of Trustees approves the Southampton Intermediate School to hold their 8th grade kickball tournament on the baseball field at Flying Point Downs Field on Friday, September 22nd, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a resolution for the walk-on for our appointment this evening?
Yes, we'd like to have a walk-on resolution at this time.
So do we have a motion to walk on the resolution?
Yes,
Motion.
it's for the purpose of hiring a village attorney.
Second.
Like the motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so on the resolution, resolved that Mayor Menger appoints and requests a motion from the Board of Trustees to approve the following appointment as village attorney, Eileen Powers Esquire, at an hourly rate of $100 per hour, not to exceed $155,000 per year in annual salary, and it's effective, I had to change the date because she did send me an email to October 14th. She is going away. I think she mentioned that in our interview.
Fine, October 14th.
14th, 2023. Is
Fine.
there a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. That concludes the resolution portion of the evening.
Okay, now we will go to comments from board members, and we will start with Trustee Aresta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank everyone who attended this evening and communicated their thoughts and concerns about this big undertaking, and those that supported, not supported. I believe that there was a healthy discussion, and it reminds me of the time I put the Gas Leak Blower Committee Task Force together, and we came to consensus, and it worked out, and I'm sure that we're going to be able to do the same thing here with this beautiful park that's proposed, and also to help clean up the second most polluted lake in the state. So I'm sure we're going to have a lot more discussion on that. We met with the tree committee today, and we're working on replacing a lot of the street trees that were diseased and taken down. So that plan is going to be
implemented, and you'll see a lot of work being done on the street trees during the fall. We also had a kickoff meeting for Johnson Environmental to take care of all to start the planning of going green, as we had discussed before. So in a few weeks, I'll have a better report on things that will be worked on as far as the solar power and the restorations of some of the buildings and things like that. So more to come on that. And yesterday, I was very happy to attend the mayor's and supervisors luncheon with the mayor, and of course, well, everybody talks about traffic. It's not just Southampton Village. So I'm sure the mayor is going to speak a little bit more about that, but I was very happy that he suggested creating an East End traffic task force, and many good things came in the conversation yesterday, and it's great that Steve Ballone has put out this RFP to do a study, an engineering study, but there's a lot of things that can be done without the engineering study on observations that I forgot. We also met with Bridget Fleming personally on Tuesday, and our chief was there as well. So hopefully a lot of these things will be implemented before this big traffic study. But it's affecting everyone on the East End, and I was very happy that there was such a response to your what you said yesterday about putting the task force. So it was very good. It was a very positive meeting. And just a quick congratulations to everyone who got the NICOM recognition tonight. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Trustee Resta. All right, Trustee Brown.
Good evening. I'd like to salute those that came to the rescue of the person in distress at the dinner for the fire department. You are to be commended, and we thank you. That's just an example of our Southampton's finest. So we do commend you and thank you. We also want to thank everyone for their participation this evening. Everyone's opinions are valued, and this was a time for us to hear those and to come together to see the best way to serve the village, and we do thank you for that. I'm just happy that we were all together here this evening, and we heard some very good things, so I thank everyone again.
I'll tell you why later.
And it's a long evening, and it's hopefully a short night, so thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. We'll go to Trustee Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Second, Trustee Brown's commendation of our first responders. I'm not sure that the actual people's names were recognized, and I just want to make sure that they are. So if you can give me a minute, if they were already mentioned, forgive me. But Christine Lockhart, Kyle McGinnis, Robert Vecchio, Colby Gill, Richard Fowler Jr., Kenny Lockhart, Jessica McGinnis, Matthew Zuhowski, Dean McNamara, Gary Spangler, Chris Epley, Robert Seor, George Harehardt, and Graham Fines. I had not heard the actual description that Kyle gave of what really happened, and the statistic that when that happens to somebody, only 11% of the time do you actually continue living was stunning to me. So amazing, hats off and congrats and kudos to those guys to use their training and all of their knowledge and their care and skill to save a person's life. Truly, truly amazing. We do have the best first responders ever, and it's thanks to our taxpayers, really, who give us the resources to make sure that all of the men and women of those departments have the equipment and the training they need to do the job as well as they do. I also just want to say a little bit about how, I don't know, to me inspiring this event tonight was to have close to 200 people show up, civilly discuss their opinions about the park and what should be done with Pond Lane. Everybody had a little bit different viewpoint based on their personal experience and where they live and how they see things, and it really was a great demonstration of the power of democracy. We are certainly, I personally understand the complexity of this issue and just pledge to use my head to listen to people, my heart. my reason to try and come up with a solution that, as Mr. Buxton said, I believe it was Mr. Buxton, provides the greatest good to the greatest number of people. And lastly, just to reiterate, Barbara Wilson, longtime service to the village, she swore me in when I was first elected trustee, and I want to thank her again for her service to the village and all that she's done for Southampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Stevenson and Trustee Zananti.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to serve as the trustee liaison to the Cultural Center and for code enforcement. Thank you for that designation. At Chief Hurtaugh's invitation, I joined her and Sergeant Kevin Dunkirk and Officer Andrew Cassell on August 23rd to watch their DOT inspection for commercial vehicle enforcement. It's amazing how important it is to enforce that code, and I saw it firsthand. I mean, some of these trucks were really huge. Between February 11th and August 23rd this year, about a 6-month period, 95 trucks were inspected, 644 tickets were written. They're uniform traffic tickets, they're called. 56 trucks were removed from service and 14 operators were removed from service. This is overweight vehicles and trucks on the wrong streets, so it's a great example of terrific code enforcement by the police department. Secondly, I did meet with the Planning Commission to continue the trustees' agenda for their work this year, which includes code enforcement, which they intend to review the financial penalties for code enforcement. They intend to present at our request an Affordable Housing Initiative report to the trustees that the village opted into, which the town is running. And thirdly, with respect to cell service, they are now trying to assess if there are consultants who can help us evaluate cell service coverage in the village, which is an important issue. Speaking of cell service, next week we're meeting with Chief Hurtaugh and Dispatcher LaMonica, Fire Chief Manny Escobar, and Ambulance Chief Kyle McGinnis, as well as Christian Pico from the Planning Commission, to hear their concerns and the gaps in service and their communications so that we can wrap this together with the cell service effort. And lastly, I had the joy, along with Trustee Brown, Mayor Manger, and Matt Weeks, of judging the sandcastle competition this year over Labor Day weekend. We saw and judged at least 40 sandcastles, both in the adult and children category, and I have to say it was really terrific, very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Zananti. So I would like to also say that I really appreciate the large number of residents that came out tonight to be heard on the Pond Lane proposed project and the Southampton Gardens, and it is nice to see so many concerned citizens come out to have their voices heard here before the village board. And we are listening, and I want to assure all of them that we certainly are not rushing to judgment here. We take everyone's comments very seriously, and there is going to be no vote on this soon. We are looking at this very deliberately, and we'll be deliberating. And again, I still am waiting to see the traffic studies, and we will be possibly having the village have its own independent review of the traffic study conducted. So there is more work to be done before this will be finalized. So I just want everyone to be assured that we are not rushing into this, and we are listening to everybody that comes forward to speak on this topic. And we appreciate the outpouring of people who wanted to come and again be heard this evening. I also want to thank Andrew Preston. He will be with us again until the end of October, but we do have a new village attorney who I am hoping will stay longer than the last one we selected. But Eileen Powers has served the town of Southampton, and she has served other villages as well. and has been in private practice. And I think she will be a great new village attorney on a an in-house basis. But I want to thank you, Andrew, again for your diligence, and we look forward to continue to work with you again for the next month and a half.
Thank you, Mayor.
I would also then like to say, to add to what Deputy Mayor Aresta said, we did have a press conference with County Executive Bologna when he came to talk about putting out an RFP at the county level to engineers and planners to come up with solutions for County Road 39. Because again, if we can keep the volume of traffic on County Road 39, that will preclude the need for cars to come into the village of Southampton. If we can keep the traffic moving freely up on County Road 39, it will prevent, again, the cars from coming into our small residential streets, which really is the objective. So we welcomed County Executive Bologna. He was there also with Supervisor Schneiderman and myself, and Trustee Aresta joined us. But again, we welcome that type of work at all levels of government so that we can come up with a solution to a growing problem here on the East End. As Trustee Aresta said, we did also meet with Legislator Fleming, Bridget Fleming, in her office here in the village on Hill Street earlier this week to talk about the same topic as well as some other topics. And we did attend the luncheon in West Hampton of the supervisors and mayors of the East End, which, as Jay Schneiderman calls it, Peconic County in exile. And I got up and spoke about putting together a traffic task force, and there was a good support from many of the attendees there to join us in trying to really come up with a task force so that we have some force in numbers here to work with not only the county but also the state of New York. Fred Thiel was there, and we want to engage the state of New York to help us also with the Montauk Highway and other state roads to, again, help us come up with a way to alleviate the traffic congestion that we have here on the East End. So we also did that. I do want to add that we have been watching Hurricane Lee as it has developed out in the Atlantic. I am pleased to say that it looks like it is not going to come to the east end of Long Island. I'm sorry, it looks like it's going to Nova Scotia, but it looks like it is going to avoid the East End. That being said, we are going to have very strong rip currents and high surf advisories in place tomorrow and maybe through the weekend. So I do want to caution everybody about that who may be going down to the beach to watch out for that. The water is still warm, but it is going to be quite dangerous this weekend. So I want people to be, again, mindful of that. We do have the fire department muster going on this weekend. They will be down at Cooper's. I've spoken to the chief to make sure that the fire departments are aware of the situation with the surf and the rip currents. But we welcome the fire departments to the village for their annual muster this year, and we hope they enjoy themselves here in the village of Southampton. We are going to have a barbecue for the village employees tomorrow, including the CSEA employees and the police department and Village Hall, and we are looking forward to having that tomorrow at 12 noon. And so we're hoping the weather holds out for that. And then finally, I would just like to say that our newest lieutenant, Ashley Jones, is actually up in Albany on behalf of the village to make sure that our police department is reaccredited with the state of New York. And so she is doing that again on behalf of the village. So I wanted to give her a shout out and thank her again in that capacity as our newest lieutenant up in Albany, making sure that we get reaccredited, which I'm confident we will be able to do. And with that, I want to wish everyone a good weekend and thank everybody and have a good night.
We're going to next.
Yes, do we have issues to discuss in executive session?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I will make a motion to adjourn this public portion of the meeting and go to executive session for discussing legal and employee matters.
Mayor,
No?
there's nothing here. I
No?
don't have anything for exec.
Gina, did you have something that we
I
had to
believe
discuss?
going to talk about,
We may have one legal matter to discuss. So I think we're going to adjourn to executive session for that purpose.
Sure.
All right.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
second?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
That's unanimous.
Okay. Good evening. The time now is 9:50. We are coming out of executive session and going back into open session. Is there a motion? I'll make the motion. Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And now I'm asking for a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Trustees at, again, 9:50 p.m. on September 14th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Good night.